issues, very tough
for the last
issues. We've made a lot of progress today, but really we've made it over the last month. This is not a one-day process deal. This is very complicated stuff, but I think it's moving in the right direction.
The American president hosted his Ukrainian counterpart in Florida for discussions about a revised 20-point framework. Kyiv's leader says
I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources.
Prosecutors claim more needs to be done to help.
There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from.
At least
Their
13 people have died after a train derailed in Mexico.
Dozens more were injured in the you are effectively advertising a great new line for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the Channel crossing as the dangerous bit, but actually where these journeys begin is in
I love that goal because he's alert. He's seen where the ball will land, and he's
kilometres have to be covered.
And some hospitals in England are using artificial intelligence to cut emergency wait times this winter. Technology pinpoints when demand will be high.
The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile.
And it is talk, yes. Good morning, everybody. I don't even know what day it is. Is it a Saturday? Monday? Is it Monday? I think it's a Monday. And I genuinely only think it's a Monday. It could be any day. It's Christmas still. Don't let it go, kids. And I'll tell you what, the news agenda stops for no one. Keir Starmer, of course, facing growing calls to strip British citizenship from Abdel Fattah. This is an alleged Islamist extremist who called for Zionists to be killed, among many other things as well, after welcoming him to the UK. We'll look at that story. Also, Labour, for the first time, imposed visa restrictions on a country refusing to take back criminal and illegal migrants. We're talking about the Dominican Republic of Congo. That's on the agenda too. More than 7 million NHS patients face waits of 4 weeks or more between September and November, making it the worst autumn since records began in 2019. We'll have a look at that. We're constantly hearing, actually, Labour, they're cutting waiting lists. Let's sort of wheel out this mantra as if it's fact. Like, the more you say it, the more true it might become. It isn't true, it's a lie. Also, Donald Trump has said that the deal to end the war in Ukraine was 95% done. We've sort of been here before. This was an afternoon of negotiations with the Ukrainian president, and a call with Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader, on Sunday. And it's been revealed that motorists are 3 times more likely to die in hybrids than in petrol cars. I know what's behind this, with a total of 122 people who died in hybrid crashes last year compared to 777 in accidents involving petrol cars. For context, hybrids are outnumbered by almost 20 to 1 on Britain's roads by petrol models. You see the disproportionality. And on Tuesday night, the Trump department announced sanctions against 5 Europeans. The charge, not corruption, terrorism or espionage. Instead, it was a crime against freedom of speech. And a lot of this freedom of speech stuff is pulling us all in more than one direction at the moment. You want to get involved in any of this? 0344 499 1000. That is the number to drop us a voice note as well. 87222 if you are messaging. Every now and again there is a story that breaks and really does make you sit up, scratch your head and ask yourself, where do we go with this one? And this is the story of the Egyptian racist and anti-Semite Abdel Fattah. He doesn't like Jews, doesn't like white people, wants all sorts of characters dead. It's just bad news all round, this fella. So it makes rather interesting reading to realise that Keir Starmer would welcome this man into the UK with open arms. You're, I think, familiar with the nuts and bolts of this story. It is just... It's almost beyond incredible that nobody in number 10 thought to have a little look. I mean, it's almost rule one in the 21st century. A little look back at the social media history of somebody that they're bringing back into the country who's been hanging by his whatsits for the last couple of years in a prison. And here he is on terra firma because he's a British citizen. Keir Starmer was quite unequivocal. He said, I'm delighted to welcome him back to the UK. He's been reunited with his loved ones who must be feeling profound relief. I want to pay tribute to his family and to all those who've worked and campaigned for this moment. Allah's case has been a top priority for my government since we came to office. I'm grateful to President Sisi for his decision to grant the pardon. And 5 minutes later, all hell broke loose when they realised, actually, this guy's a bit of a wrong-un. There's some terrible tweets. This man's been saying some really, really bad stuff. Things like, I consider killing any colonialists, especially Zionists, heroic. I am a racist. I don't like white people. I'm a violent person who advocates the killing of all Zionists, including civilians. So, F off. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's a nice selection of these things that he'd said in the past. Nobody spotted this. Let's speak to James Price, who's with us for this, our former government advisor. You know what it's like in government, James, when stuff just crops up and everybody in the room goes, oh, my God, how did we miss this? I mean, this does predate the Labour Party, though.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to be with you. Yeah, let's get this out of the way, first of all. The Conservatives were involved in this as well. It's absolutely indefensible. I'm very glad to see on the front of the Mail that the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, has said, I don't want this man in the country, we should get him out of here. Yeah. I think that's very good news. But there are people who survived the election last year in the Conservative ranks who campaigned for this guy to be released. And at least Ian Duncan Smith said, I regret doing that. That was silly, because he jumped on the bandwagon, as did dozens of celebrities, as did hundreds of dozens of Labour MPs and peers and all the rest of it. It's ridiculous, and it just shows how faddish, how modish some of these campaigns are. And you will all be getting these emails of, sign up for this petition here, there and everywhere, and you go, oh, I'm a good person, I'll click my name to that, and think no more of it. We expect MPs, we expect civil servants, and ministers in particular, to be a lot better than this. Because, as you say, this story in particular, if there wasn't lots of documentary evidence of this on X, on Talk, in the papers, you would assume this was a sort of far-right fever dream. You couldn't make up a more insane, bonkers story than the fact that successive prime ministers, in particular now Keir Starmer, have expended a huge amount of time, of political capital, of negotiating and diplomacy tactics, all the rest of it, to get somebody out of an Egyptian prison when he is an Egyptian. He was only given a British passport because his grandmother gave birth to his mother whilst she was studying here many, many decades ago. And we gave this guy a British passport as part of a kind of ruse to try and spring him from this prison. Yeah. Why? I don't understand. So even Starmer's tweet there is wrong when it says, I'm glad to welcome him back to the UK. I don't think he's ever been inside the UK before. This man is not British in any sense other than the purely administrative.
Yeah, like he's some old kind of, treasured cockney from the East End. We've got to get our boy back here, He knows nothing about the place. And it's interesting, even Liz Truss was also, she doesn't escape this one as well, advocating. But nobody, it seems, previous administration and this one, thought to do what I kind of just thought was route one now. Have a look at his social media. See what, we jail people in this country for social media posts. It might be an idea that if you've got this controversial figure, this Egyptian chap, and, whatever the Egyptian system was advocating or accusing him of, it's got to be worth checking and just seeing what he said in the past. Let's have a little look. You know, there's Sid over there in number 10. He works in the social media department. Sid, can you check the tweets? And somebody might have done that. And had they done that, and it wouldn't have taken much, because it took the detectives of social media about 2 seconds to realise, hang on a sec, this man we're welcoming back with open arms, like he's Mother Teresa or Gandhi or something, you know, he said some pretty terrible things. And they're not... He's not sort of insinuating a few things. No. It's not like, oh, I'm a bit of a lefty, you know, I'm kind of in the Corbyn camp or something like that. I mean, this is proper, full-on, grade A stuff.
Well, exactly as you say, there's no wink, wink, nudge, nudge here. He literally says, I think I want to go and kill loads of Americans. Yeah. There's one point he said that, right? And again, as regular listeners to this show will know, I'm married to an American. I'm such a wife guy, I mention her all the time. Yeah. What are we supposed to think that Keir Starmer says it's great that this man who is coming to this country wants to kill loads of Americans? Is my wife one of the Americans he wants to kill? Is the American ambassador? Are any other Americans listening to this? Are they the ones that this guy wants to go around and kill? Yeah. Or the white people he says he hates? And he said this multiple times about white people, by the way. And he gets quite specific. He particularly hates the English and the Dutch. So the Glorious Revolution, bad time for him, clearly. Yeah. But again, these sort of weird, specific cries. The guy tweeted something like 285,000 times. And by the way, he was put in prison for some of the stuff that he was saying on social media. So again, you would think that some genius in the Foreign Office would think, I wonder what he was saying after all. And they go, oh, he was a democracy campaigner. The guy got arrested as he was found with a load of weapons on him in 2011 during the fall of former President Hosni Mubarak. Well, what happened afterwards? They did have elections, and who did the Egyptian people vote for? They voted for the Muslim Brotherhood, an organisation that Nigel Farage has said that he would ban if he wins office, that is banned in Saudi Arabia, is banned in the United Arab Emirates, is banned in Bahrain and in Jordan and lots of other places as well. But not here. And has a specific plan that they want to use the political systems of various countries to take over those countries and put political Islam in place. That is not a pro-democracy, cuddly, nice guy. He wants to kill all the Jews, he wants to kill the white people and the Americans, and he hates the gays. Oh, and by the way, he wants to subvert democracy. Come on in, here's your passport, brother.
Come on, fella, you're exactly the kind of person we want. And interestingly, it's not just the tweets, because a few years back, he was sort of nominated, curiously, for some award, and it was realised then that actually maybe we shouldn't give this fella an award, because he's got, let's have a look what he's been up to. Kill white people, I'm a racist, don't like people, I don't know really anybody actually, police, I don't like the police, and the Dutch, and what the hell have the Dutch done to anybody, for goodness sake? So it was already known, even prior to this Twitter thing, because you could say, well, what if nobody knew at one stage what he might have done? So when Liz Truss was in power, maybe she could just about get away with saying, we just didn't know anything about this guy. But today, you can't. Right. But there are still people. It's worth having a little listen to this, because there's obviously there's politicians, and we'll come to the Jeremy Corbyn Sultana Party and their statement on this in a moment, which is just beautifully predictable. We'll come to that. But of course, not just politicians, celebrities like to get involved, don't they? Celebrities love to get involved with what they believe is, you know, a sort of an injustice. They cannot get out of bed in the morning without a sense of iniquity going on everywhere. So this is a little montage of what some celebs said about this very nice man.
Prime Minister Starmer.
Dear Prime Minister Starmer.
Dear Prime Minister Starmer.
Dear Prime Minister Starmer.
Prime Minister, I'm making this video because I, like a lot of people, and I should imagine yourself included, are deeply concerned.
Dear Prime Minister, I'm reaching out to you today because I'm extremely worried.
I am one of many thousands in Britain and around the world deeply concerned about the fate of the writer Alaa Abdel Fattah.
The brilliant, courageous and inspiring writer who has been justly imprisoned in Egypt for far too many years.
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of trying to create a kind of Salman Rushdie thing here, you know, the writer, as if this is some, you know, horrendous act of, I mean, and perhaps, you know, who knows what goes on in the Egyptian judicial system. I wouldn't want to be in a court over there in Cairo. I know that much. I'm sure it's pretty rough. But nonetheless, the speed with which some of these people will jump on this stuff without knowing anything. Those people we just heard, Brian Cox, Nighy, and all the others, they don't know anything about this guy.
Of course not. The bit that gets me is such an American brain moment, again, that they keep saying Prime Minister Starmer. That's not how we say that in this country. So
no, we don't do that.
This has obviously been written by a foreigner trying to get this stuff going and who's learned English in America. You don't say Prime Minister Starmer.
They were one step away from saying Mr. Prime Minister.
Exactly right. Yeah, and another one from saying Mr. President. Yeah, exactly right. And I think the important bit is that we obviously all know that all celebrities, almost all of them, are complete morons. And there was that great Golden Globes hosting by Ricky Gervais, where he says, listen, most of you would go and work for Al-Qaeda if they paid you for it. So come up here, thank your producer, and F word off, because no one wants to hear from you. You've got terrible morals, etc.
But of course, it's not just the Lovies. There is the Jeremy Corbyn party.
Yes.
They're called Your Party. They're still called Your Party. They wrote this. Now, this was after everything was revealed that, you know, this fella's been invited back, and turns out he's a bit of a wrong-un. They wrote, and Nigel Farage is obviously one of those that's leading the case to have this man deported. So Your Party said, this is the man Farage and Britain's leading racists want deported. Allah was a leader of the struggle against tyranny in Egypt. He risked his life for freedom and democracy, jailed by Egypt's military dictatorship. The bigots attacking him have no idea what that means.
Well, they're going to hand him a membership form, right? He believes all the stuff that they believe.
I think he's down for Shadow Home Secretary in the Your Party administration.
The bit that gets me as well is these people all think that they love foreign policy because actually none of their ideas work on the domestic level, right? Yep. Just let's tax everybody more, let's break everything. None of them ever worked in a business or actually really worked a day in their lives. So they like to think that they are great statesmen and stride the world stage and understand these things. Yep. I'll go back again to the fact that although very unpleasant, and I'm not a shill for any dictator or anything, the alternative to President Sisi and the military dictatorship, as the Fruit and Nut Party described him, is the Muslim Brotherhood, who go around trying to foment revolutions and all these sorts of things that are banned in some of the decent Middle Eastern countries. What do you want? Let's choose. Which way, Western man? What are we going to have? Are we going to have this guy here who hates the Jews and he hates white people and he hates everybody else? Are we going to have him running around with weapons and plotting and scheming, now in Britain it turns out? Or do you want someone at least who can keep stability and we can do business with? Neither of those are very nice options, but that's foreign policy for you. If we only did business with nice people, we wouldn't have any friends.
Correct.
Maybe only the Dutch.
Can you imagine the Trump administration dealing with this in this kind of way? I mean, it would be... It doesn't matter what... I keep saying this over the last few weeks. It doesn't matter whether you love or hate Donald Trump, but on issues such as this, you can see him there in the Oval Office or the press room giving a statement. He would be incandescent on this. And that man would not be setting foot on American soil.
No, not on your...
Or if he did, he'd be soon setting foot on an aeroplane from American
and this is what's going to happen next. If Farage and Kemi Badenoch have both said they want the guy deported, you've now got some Labour MPs coming out calling for this as well. I suppose Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has the chance to do the funniest thing ever, which is, well, we've looked at your social media, next to Lucy Connolly in prison, on you go, swap one prison for another.
Which brings us to another point. We'll just talk about this in a few moments. We're going to take a short pause. Get involved on this, 0344 499 1000. Should this man be deported? Is it as simple as that? But is there a contradiction in what we're perhaps concluding on this in terms of, you know, who can say what on social media? Remember, many people write everything off from social media as just hurty words. Do we apply that to this man? Details to come. You can voice note us on that number as well, 0344 499 1000, or you can call as well, or message on 87222. You're listening to Morning Glory with Ian Collins. This is Talk. It's coming up on 20 past 6.
brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, welcome to Morning Glory. We are talking, amongst other things, James Price is with us, by the way, throughout the course of the hour. Loads of other stuff to talk about, taking your calls and comments. Should this man Abdel Fattah be deported, is clearly top of the list on this one. But James, the contradiction here, of course, that maybe we're all guilty of, because there's been lots of people that have said things on social media. They've had that knock at the door from the police, and we've seen the videos, and you think, really? I mean, not even for political stuff. You know, the couple that had a WhatsApp row about the school governors, you know, and like 12 coppers showed up at their house.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
Handcuffs and everything in front of their kids. So there's all of that stuff. But of course, what seems to be the headline that comes from that is many people argue, you know, it's hurty words. And whenever they do it on social, they do a video going, and they do that horrible, what's that called, that you do with your fingers?
Yeah, the speech quotes.
The speech quotes, yeah. Hurty words on social media. Do we afford this man the same defence?
Well, no. I think the fundamental bit here is that we have enough problems as it is at home, right? We have these problems with speech laws and speech codes because we don't have a robust defence the way the Americans do. It's enshrined in their First Amendment to the Constitution, aka the Bill of Rights, written by Thomas Jefferson, and therefore they have a lot more protection about this stuff. It would never happen in America, for example, that a woman who was praying silently in her head, or who said she may have been praying, gets charged under an offence. It would never have been the case, as I think it was, that a politics teacher, just a few days before Christmas, was playing some videos of Donald Trump in an American politics class and gets done for various hate speech for showing Trump videos. Or Graham Linehan, the guy who wrote Father Ted, again met at Heathrow Airport by half a dozen police officers who interrogated him so roughly that he ended up in hospital. That never would have happened here, right?
Somebody off a plane, for goodness sake, unless, you know, you're looking for Jeffrey Dahmer.
Right.
I mean, you seriously meet somebody off an aeroplane. Right. If you want to have a chat with him, send a community support officer around.
Right.
You know, a couple of days later, you know, 5 blokes off an aeroplane.
Fred West coming in on a jet to holiday from Malaga.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, maybe the boys in blue can step in at that point. But I mean, really?
And so we have these issues that obviously need to be dealt with. But I think the really important bit here is that this guy, I'll say it again, is just not British. He is not British in any sense other than the administrative. We gave him a passport as we've suicidally handed out passports like Billy-O to too many people. And I think fundamentally this will go down as a kind of watershed moment that people will realise just how much we have devalued that. And Kemi Badenoch on the front page again of the Mail, I think very good at saying this, that it's not just about having a bit of paper that says you can come into the country. You have to subscribe to, I mean, she talks about British values. I think it's actually even deeper than that, about our way of life, about our culture, our history. Of course, people who weren't born here can become British in some sense. People may disagree with that. I think it's trickier maybe to become English or something, and there's a sort of difference there we could talk about, in the same way that I think you could become an American, but maybe you couldn't become a native of a particular state if you weren't born there. And because these conversations about identity are very difficult. This guy doesn't meet any of these tests whatsoever. And yet we are importing him with all the terrible ideas and stuff that he's got at a time when we've seen horrendous attacks in Bondi Beach in Australia, another terror attack that was foiled very recently, went through the courts and these 2 chaps have been charged, 20 years on from 7/7, all the other attacks we've had, and God knows how many attacks our amazing security services have saved us from, when we know there are already, 45,000 Islamists that MI5 say are on an active watch list.
That's right.
It's 45,001 now.
Yes,
It's astonishing,
100%. It's worth having a listen to Keir Starmer speaking on this when he was in opposition. This is in 2022. Have a careful listen as well to the specifics of what the now Prime Minister had to say back then.
Can I start by raising the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah? As the Prime Minister knows and has said, he's a British citizen, jailed for the crime of posting on social media and been imprisoned in Egypt for most of the last 9 years. He's been on hunger strike for the last 6 months. Now, the Prime Minister just said that he raised it with President Sisi. Could he tell us what progress he made in securing Alaa's release?
So that's Mr. Starmer even alluding to social media in that one. So where do we go with this, James?
It is just astonishing. I mean, the hypocrisy. I can't wait for PMQs to get going again, right? There'll be parties tearing.
Yeah, we've got another couple of weeks for that week on.
Yeah. But again, what is the defence going to be? I mean, Starmer will just kind of brazen this out as he's brazen through every one of the sort of hundreds of scandals he has already overseen as Prime Minister. But what is the defence of this? What does happen now? Do we have to go back to the Egyptians and say, actually, chaps, I know we've been pestering you about this over every COP, every G20, every UN General Assembly for years now, and you very kindly looked the other way. Well, we gave this guy a passport and sprung him from prison for us. Could you have him back now, actually, please? Because, again, they've broken even more rules around this. So the fact that normally, if you are a dual citizen, if you are both British and, let's say, Greek, and you get arrested in Greece for committing a crime then and being charged, you wouldn't normally expect to receive consular assistance from the British ambassador in Greece or whatever if you're a dual national, because we say, look, we'll give you British as well, but you're also of that country and we don't want to mess in these affairs. We've broken that rule to go and do this. And we've also, the guy that's been given the passport because of a change in the law, again, that the Tories did back in 2019, that took away the right to a good character test to give somebody a passport. This guy would not have passed the good character test, not just according to me and everybody listening, but to various lawyers. And why did we take away the good character test about giving someone a passport? Because a foreign murderer applied through the European Court of Human Rights, saying it's unfair to expect me to be a good character because I'm a foreign murderer. It's against my human rights. And so the Conservatives were forced, by our being inside the ECHR, to change the law. And that's another reason why this guy was able to get a passport.
Because a murderer could never, ever prove that they were of good character.
Right. Oh, the murder. Oh, yeah, sorry. At least I didn't write anything on social media.
Oh, the murders in the 80s. Yeah, I had loads of those.
But I didn't tweet about it, so it's all right, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Extraordinary
But
stuff.
I mean, I think the wider question for me, and it does, I am fascinated about how social media, on a wider point, plays its part and its impact. I mean, there are people on social media that claim we are the media now. I mean, if you look through social media, I mean, that's a pretty piddle-poor claim to say we are them, and it's full of so much rot, misinformation. Even stories that are true are then kind of spun, and I don't know who the people are that are claiming we are the new media. Is he the new media, this fella? This Abdel Fattah? Is he the... Would he claim he's the new media? Because he's saying stuff on social media.
Right. I mean, I think actually it's Elon Musk himself who very frequently tweets "You are the media" now to people on Twitter in particular.
Yeah.
Again, without this guy having access to Twitter, we wouldn't have known what a complete rotter he is.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we are able to know, because, you know, some poor soul in MI5 or GCHQ or whatever is now going to have to add this fella to the list of utter wrong-uns we've got in this country and spend, you know, huge amounts of taxpayer resources watching him. But at least we know, and the guy was able to say it. And I think that it's illustrative that this has come out at the same time as a young guy called Nick Shirley in the United States has put out a 42-minute long documentary he's made himself, again onto Twitter, probably would have been banned in the pre-Musk days, where the guy goes around Minnesota and has unveiled huge amounts of fraud being committed by the Somalian community in Minnesota. They uncover $110 million of fraud in one day by going around daycare centres and child daycare centres and bogus hospitals and healthcare providers, and realising these guys are creaming hundreds of millions of pounds. And as a result, the FBI and senators and the rest of it are looking into
getting
this.
involved.
Yeah, and again, so I think that whilst there is a huge amount of dross, it's great that we've got this resource to fight against governments.
Yeah, and it does happen. I mean, that story, because I was intrigued when the headlines on that particular story in Minnesota, you know, it's taken this one guy to I mean, the story was already out there. It was reported. I think the New York Post had done some stuff on it. However, the optics of somebody going in with a camera, it's a bit like over here when somebody goes into a migrant hotel.
Right.
It often fires up the narrative. They didn't discover the story, but they gave it a new kind of lease of life. And it forces, once it's taken hold on social media, it forces people in office to you know, suddenly start getting animated about something.
Exactly. And actually, with this video in Minnesota, it's now been watched 100 million times. It's one of the top tweets ever done.
In history,
and the great bit about it is it's actually a combination of this young guy who's sort of 24 or something, going around with a camera and a little microphone, and some older chap he's met, a guy who looks like he's in his 50s or 60s, who's a local guy, who's just driven past all these dodgy daycare centres, could never see a single child there, goes and does his own research. So it's a kind of older boomer and a young kid who can do social media uniting. So for all the people who are listening to this, if you see some of this stuff, why not have a go at, you know, don't break the law or anything, but finding out some of this stuff, because it's a great combination.
Nick Shirley is the guy, the young guy that did this. He can't be any older than late 20s, I think.
I think he said 23, 24.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that. Extraordinary stuff. Let's get a voice note then on our newfound British citizen, Abdul El Fattah, I think is the pronunciation of his name. Here's a voice note on this very issue from Pete.
I really can't believe Keir Starmer this time. This is beyond the pale. He has no way out of this one because, as he's openly stated, him and his government have had this man high on their list of people to get into the country for a long time. So clearly he was checked out. They knew exactly who he was, what he'd done, what his political views are and his hatreds, and yet they still want to let him into the country. Now what I want to know is, if this man comes into the country and he commits an offence of any kind whatsoever, or even plans one, will the Prime Minister be taking personal responsibility for allowing this man into the country when they could just turn around and say no?
It's a fair point, Pete. Thank you very much for that. I should say that Mr. Abdel Fattah has since apologised for this moment of madness. I mean, it was quite a long moment of madness that spanned over tens of thousands of tweets that all seemed to revolve around the idea of killing Jews and white people and police officers and, you know, calling himself a racist and goodness knows what else. I mean, this was an absolute wrong-un from start to finish.
It's going to require Alistair Campbell 45 minutes WMD levels of spin, isn't he? So, oh yeah, I'm really sorry. I was obviously mocking homophobes and the rest of it. It's not going to fly. Because
that's what he said. Yeah, you've missed the context of it.
Right, because he's had to go at so many different groups. When is he going to apologise to the Dutch people that he's insulted?
Well, that's very
let alone
true.
all the Americans he wants to kill, and the white people, and the Jews, and all the rest of it.
I remind you, there's no such thing as a bad Dutch person. in the entirety of history, if you look through Dutch history, which I have studied at PhD level, I can't find a wrong-un in there anywhere, James.
Well, we rely on them for our glorious revolution and the constitution that made Britain top nation around the world. Thank you again, William of Orange, top man.
Indeed.
I'm going to take his word over Alaa Abdel Fattah, the extremist from Egypt, any day of the week.
Any day of the week. We'll take a brief pause. We're back with more of your comments on this. We'll also cover some of the other stories as well. 0344 499 1000. Should this man just be deported now? Is that the only option that Keir Starmer's got? Spoiler alert, by the way, he won't be deported. But should that be the position of this government? Nobody gets off the hook here. Liz Truss, James Cleverly, lots of others have all made very positive remarks about this man in the past. Nobody thought to check his Twitter account, because that might have given you a bit of a clue as to the nuts and bolts of this man's thinking. 0344 499 1000. You can voice note us there as well, or call on that number 87222 if you're sending a message. Just gone 6:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 7. You've got me for a week, well, nearly a week, 4 days this week. And then, of course, the new Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show kicks off a week today. Looking forward to that. James Price is with us, former government advisor. We're looking at the big stories of the day. And we have all the front pages here as well. Let's have a look at what they're telling us. There it is, though. This particular story that we've been looking at on the Times front page, push to strip citizenship from thug, hailed by Prime Minister. Activists welcome to the UK. Backed killing Zionists is the front page of the Times. The Sun this morning go for a Bridget Bardot. Of course, not of most of our generation, but I think we're all familiar that this was a woman whose impact in the world of glamour and film and acting was absolutely huge. She was demonstrably, by any level, a beautiful woman, and then dedicated her life to looking after animals.
She did, although she also had some quite spicy political views, which I don't think I'm actually probably allowed under Keir Starmer's Britain to say any of them on air. But when she went as
Can
an
you
elderly
allude
lady,
to some of them, James?
she was a big supporter of very right-wing causes. And of Marine Le Pen and others.
Yes,
and so she goes to the Elysee to meet President Macron. So this was later in life, and he says, "Look, I know you're going to shout at me," and she says, "Yeah, I will," and then has a massive go at him. Says, "You're destroying France. You're a big lefty. You're a socialist, etc." So she was beautiful and very robust.
Fair
the
play
perfect
to
woman,
Bridget. Yeah, but I quite like the idea that she stepped out of the limelight really, because she could probably have carried on a career and decided that life was better looking after manky cats for some bizarre reason, and dogs and all sorts of other feral beasts.
A great cause. What was it? Who's it? John Donne or someone who said, "I like not the man less, but the animal more."
Yeah, and he might have been right about that. And the other story they've got on the front of the Sun as well this morning is the Adam Peaty story, Gordon Ramsay's speech at his daughter's wedding, because his daughter has married the Olympic swimmer Adam Peaty, and Peaty's mum didn't get an invite to the wedding. And you might think that the bride's dad, Gordon Ramsay, would have said, well, it's a bit of a sensitive area, we won't talk about this. Oh, no, this was hell's wedding that he unleashed, and he just went straight for it. He said, my wife, Tana, will be a good mum to both of you. He probably put the boot in there.
I was going to say addressing the elephant in the room, but that's not a nice thing to call someone's mum, I suppose.
Well, that's very true.
It reminds me of someone, a guy got married and got divorced quite quickly and gets remarried, and the best man is best man for both weddings, and so he stands up to do the best man speech at the second wedding. It's lovely to see so many of you back here. Get it out of the way early.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. Thing is with this, I never understand. I mean, families can fall out. I would assume that Peaty, who's an Olympic swimmer, as a kid, I've got a friend whose kid is pretty good at swimming, and they're up at 4 a.m. travelling the country for tournaments, and they go all over. It costs them a flipping fortune. But he's a gifted swimmer, and so they've run. I would imagine Peaty's mum, dad, whoever did that at one point. That's how he got into it.
Yeah, I think.
So what the hell can happen in your family where it's so bad you can't invite your mum?
It's sad, isn't it?
To your own wedding.
It's very sad. And look, I know at Christmas time we've just kind of gone through the main few days of Christmas, and family tensions can sometimes spike if you don't like it. So I understand these things, but I suppose you want to put all this stuff aside. I'm lucky that the worst thing that my mum, who I know is listening, has ever done was this Christmas. She meant to say decaf coffee, and she couldn't remember the word for decaf, so she called it non-binary coffee. So there you go.
That's a great news.
Isn't that brilliant?
Why have the Nespresso boys not picked up on that one? Surely there is a market.
Royalties to Sue Price in Gloucestershire.
We only sell non-binary coffee, I think you'll find at this end. It's interesting when families do fall out, and then, every now and again you hear the story, and somebody tells you, I don't talk to my sister or my brother or something, and then you're in the pub and they explain the story, and you think, what, over that?
Right.
Over that? Seriously?
Exactly. And I do think that maybe this is a legitimate excuse, but the people that fall out over politics, I think, is absolutely extraordinary. And I saw that someone wrote in once to the Free Press, which is that American sort of news site that's doing very well, and said, look, my brother is a terrible anti-vaxxer. He doesn't want his kids to have some of the vaccines. Should I cut him out of my life? And the kind of agony aunt replies back being like, look, if he can put up with someone as sanctimonious as you, I think you should forgive him anything. Get over yourself.
That's
which is
great.
Superb advice.
That is superb. Front of the Telegraph, they're splashing with the story that we're talking about here this morning. Extremists must lose citizenship, Starmer told. Will Keir Starmer... It's going to be interesting to know what's going to... Is he just going to stay quiet and do nothing?
Yeah, he'll just move on and nothing's happened. He hasn't got the dexterity to be able to handle any of this stuff. Yeah. And I think what's illustrative is, although Starmer has been quiet since he tweeted how delighted he was that this white-hating, Dutch-hating, gay-hating, Jew-hating scumbag has been brought into the country because of him. He hasn't tweeted for a few days since then, but and no ministers, I think, have really commented on it, although a few Labour MPs, God bless them, have actually come out and criticised this. A guy called Tom Rutland, I think, was the first, so well done to Tom Rutland for doing this. The Foreign Office has had to release an official statement on this, and they fall right into the trap. They say, he is a British citizen, therefore we've got to do this for him. But only in the administrative sense. You were the people that bent or broke all the rules to hand him this passport, to spring him out of the jail in the first place. He is not British in any sense other than the administrative. And by the way, he himself says this in so many of his tweets. I'm not British, I'm very far from British. These are direct quotes. I hate all white people, but especially the English and the Dutch. I don't know why I'm on the Dutch this morning. It's just such a bizarre group to hate. Such a lovely group of people. And this is the kind of person we've got. So all the Dutch people who are listening should be as worried as all the Jews and all the gay people and all the Americans and all the white people who are listening. Because this guy's here now, and last time he got arrested, he had a load of weapons on him. What's he going to do next? Yeah.
I bet he even hated Bridget Bardot. You just know it, don't you? You know he had that in him.
She probably hated him back, to be
Indeed,
fair.
yeah, absolutely. The other story, of course, Putin serious about peace, insists Trump. Trump had a 75-minute phone call with Vladimir Putin shortly before the meet-up, the powwow in Florida with Zelensky. You wonder what, in these sort of 75-minute, 2-hour meetings, were you ever on those calls?
I've done some with other, not with the American president and the Russian, but with various other heads of state and heads of government. And they are a funny mix. So we met Vice President Kamala Harris on a work trip once, and I was not terribly impressed, shall we say. Yes. But when we met for a long meeting, we said the Treasury Secretary, the American version of the Chancellor, and it's very peculiar because they have a sort of staged moment beforehand where you're sitting around the actual real meeting table. Everyone's got a glass of water, except for a few of them, the Americans who had the Diet Cokes ready. Good product placement. Yeah. And all the press and the media come in, all the photographers and everything, and they come and do this, and then you've got these sort of weird prepared remarks that they kind of go through, and they literally will go, yes, it is very good that we have the special relationship, and then all that stuff. And then all the press leave. Then you can actually have a real conversation, which is useful because it's not the same doing it over diplomatic cables and things like that. And I think the bit that is useful to engage with someone like, maybe Putin is a tricky example, but would be useful for someone like President Xi, who is so in an echo chamber, as Putin is, that they could get themselves into thinking, the Americans hate us and want to kill us, maybe they'll launch nuclear weapons, so we've got to do the same back. Which is why that kind of dialogue in the Cold War was so important, that you could hear directly from the horse's mouth, this is not where it's going, and so you can try and at least course correct from those sorts of bubbles and echo chambers that these guys are in. You know, God knows what Putin thought he would be able to win this war in 3 days because, you know, that's what his generals told him, because otherwise they'd be sent to the Gulag. Yes. So it's good to give them these sorts of correctives. I just hope that we can get something done out of this, because as we tick in a few days into 2026, we're that bit closer to this very small window in which the Chinese Communist Party thinks that it needs to go and invade Taiwan, because after that point the costs start spiralling for them. They start spending more money on servicing their battleships than on building new ones, and pensions and aging population, all the rest of it. And American war gamers and planners are assuming that in 2026, 2027, 2028, so in the next few years, China, and they're on the working assumption, not that they may, but that they will attempt to invade Taiwan. And if we still have a load of, especially American resources, but Europeans who caught up in what's going on in Ukraine, however awful it is, or something going on between Israel and Iran, and then the shock of all shocks, something like that kicks off, then we're going to be in a very bad way. But don't worry, Keir Starmer's Prime Minister. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, everything's in safe hands, kids. Don't worry about that. it's interesting with Putin. I mean, because America could just, and this is going to sound a bit outrageous now, but I mean, at the weekend they had, you know, an assignment in Nigeria, along with the Nigerian government. The Americans went in looking at sort of ISIS targets.
He was a lieutenant general who was the national security advisor for Trump for a while. He says, why don't we just give them bigger and better weapons, which we could, because most of the stuff that the Americans have given Ukraine, the things that are considered so old hat and so defunct by America, they were going to be mothballed and destroyed. Yes. They were just sitting somewhere. And yet those things were so effective that they destroyed the cream of Russia's military. True. So we could do that. They don't, I think, want to escalate this anymore. And by the way, I would be sympathetic to sending the Ukrainians better stuff. They don't want to escalate these things anymore because they want this stuff to be finished as soon as possible so the Europeans can sort themselves out and deal with Russia once we rearm, because we haven't been nearly armed enough, speaking especially about places like Germany and France and Britain too, so that they can go and focus on China. And what they don't want to do is to push Russia even closer into the hands of China, because Russia is essentially just a kind of petrol station with a small kleptocratic country attached to it that is now fueling and feeding the Chinese Communist Party.
But of course, I mentioned the SAS. I mean, if they really wanted to do something, they could do something. But there's obviously diplomatic international agreements where you don't just take out your enemy.
Well, the scary thing, of course,
you don't like them.
That we you know, if you're a sort of naive Labour person, you think you get rid of one dictator like in Egypt, you suddenly get a cuddly democracy. Nope. In Egypt, you get the Muslim Brotherhood. In Russia, who'd you get next? Is it going to? It's not Navalny, because he got killed. It's there is not a healthy, vibrant civil society waiting to put some cuddly university academic or somebody out. Well, is it someone who's even more nuts?
I was about to say, when we've spoken to Bill Browder and people like that, they say the problem is there are people in the wings that are far more extreme than Putin.
Right.
So you be careful what you wish for.
Exactly right.
Story on the front page of the Daily Mail, Kemi Badenoch, I don't want people who hate our country coming here. This, of course, is in reference to the story of Abdel Fattah that we've been discussing here this morning. As you rightly said, James, come PMQs, which will be back a week on Wednesday. Is that right? Yes, a week on Wednesday.
Yes, that's right.
Then she's going to go for this one, isn't she?
I hope so. And again, there are some
because it is a bit of an open goal. She can also claim a bit of immunity herself by saying, well, I was never involved in any of these pleas for this man to be brought to the UK.
Exactly. And ditto Rob Jenrick, who's the first person, I think, to jump on this with a letter to Starmer. Ditto Alex Burghardt, who's Kemi's very capable de facto deputy, is very good on this stuff. But I hope it brings up a broader conversation as well about citizenship. But we have a precedent here of people will remember Shamima Begum, who is a schoolgirl who ran off to go and be an ISIS bride. And because she was a dual national, the then Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, made the decision to take her passport off her, say, you've gone and joined ISIS, you're not coming back, thanks, love. And I think we should have a proper conversation about this. In the last few years, we've handed passports out like kind of free leaflets, and they're not that. They bring you not only rights, but responsibilities to adopt to our way of life. And if you're not going to do that, as we know many aren't, the people who are coming over in small boats, any illegal migrant, actually, frankly, lots of legal migrants who've come here who we know won't ever contribute economically, and we know don't bother integrating or assimilating in any way. What are they doing here, and why are they in receipt of hard-earned taxpayers' money? Because all the people who are up now in Alarm Clock Britain, who are getting up and working, especially in this cold day between Christmas and New Year's, are being taxed a huge amount of money, and a huge amount of that going to these people who don't work, who will never contribute, and will only teach their kids the same things as well. We don't have to accept that.
Another story here as well, America's free speech czar. We reject Brits who censor the US. This is really interesting, isn't it, what's happened here?
Yeah, absolutely right. And a lot of this stems from the US national security strategy that was released recently, which a lot of lefties have got themselves into paroxysms of conniptions of hate about all of this. What it actually says is we want Europe to be really strong, and we're worried that Europe is going to suffer from civilizational erasure, as they put it, because of over-regulation. Well, I agree with them on that. Because of mad policies about mass immigration from the third world. Well, I agree with that. And because of stifling of free speech. Well, I agree with that too. do. And again, I think it's just healthy that we should get used again to countries choosing who they have and who they don't have come into their country. We don't have to give every scumbag who wants to come here and preach horrible things a visa. The Americans don't have to put up with a British person basing themselves in America, creaming loads of money off idiot leftists there in order to censor people around the world on social media. Enough.
But it's a sort of an oxymoronic situation, isn't it, with this thing of free speech? Because ultimately, however you want to intellectualise these debates about, you know, what people are allowed to say and context and nuance and all of this stuff, it usually boils down to whether you agree with what is said, doesn't it?
Well, this is a very good point.
It's the human condition. You know, if we instinctively say, well, ultimately, I agree with the sentiment, so therefore I'm going to defend the person that said it. So Lucy Connolly being the most high-profile example of somebody who went to jail, ludicrously. That's not something that should have ever been a prison sentence, frankly.
Of course.
But what she said and pleaded guilty to was pretty unsavoury stuff. Nobody is disputing that. But people who would defend that would not defend this man and say it was just hurty words. Whereas that's often the defence given for somebody that you agree with. It's just hurty words. And some people absolutely believe that anything on social media is fair game, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and your German lawmakers saying things on the internet is even worse than saying it in real life because it can be spread more widely, which is why it's now illegal to insult politicians or public officials in Germany. Illegal to insult them. Can't even say, you know, I think Keir Starmer was a silly Billy or whatever. That would be, if you were saying about Chancellor Merz, you'd be in prison for that, which is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think what happened is that we weaponised cancel culture broadly to stop people, as you say, saying things you don't like. We mentioned this case in Minnesota, this documentary.
Yep.
The really eye-opening bit for me, and I'm very nerdy, I remember it's 28 minutes and about 5 seconds in if you want to go and see, is they expose some of this fraud. And this very smart young Somali woman comes out and says, oh, you're saying that just because we're Somalis, it's all fraud, and says this to a police officer.
Yeah.
As if this was, I've used the racism card, I'm perfectly now protected.
Some sort of get out of jail free moment.
Exactly.
Yes. We'll talk some more. James Price is with us. You want to get involved with this, the big story we're discussing, and all the other ones as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It is Morning Glory with Ian Collins, 5 to 7. We're going to get a final few words with James Price, who's with us, looking at the big stories of the day. There's been the dominant one, the Abdel Fattah story that we're discussing. Should this man be deported? Your thoughts on that, you can voice notice too. But also there's an interesting Nigel Farage story as well this morning. And he's had a lot to say about our first story, but this is something different.
Yeah, I think this is really, really important. So he's proposing stripping away pensions, and we know, or you should know, that civil servants' pensions are absolutely fabulous. Copper-plated, gold-plated, platinum-plated, whatever you want to call them. They are fabulous. Of stripping them away from civil servants who, for example, let dangerous foreign offenders like Alaa Abdel Fattah into Britain. And I think this is long overdue. When Starmer came in last year, 200 people changed jobs across the whole of the British state. That's it. 100 ministers, 100 special advisors like I was, who don't even have any actual legitimate executive authority to boss people around. Every other civil servant stays the same. So you wonder why you vote for different people in different parties and nothing changes.
Yes.
Because the administrative state, the blob, stays the same. And it's high time they have some accountability and some consequences for the poor state of the country.
What happens there with these guys? Because, you know, if you get a good... I remember Nadine Dorries saying the civil servants she worked with when she was in the culture department were just the best ever. You know, you really need good civil servants. But that's just like a small handful of people. She's probably referring to 3 people that were very close to her and she worked well with. But there is something else going... Is it a groupthink problem? Is it a desire to always retain the status quo? I'm thinking of the sort of Brexit, you know, that it's just too much faff to make fundamental change.
Yes to all of the above. I think one of the problems is you get what's called a private office. So the people who sit around the Minister or the Secretary of State, and they kind of your ways of reaching into the rest of the department and across other departments, they're usually staffed by young, hungry, smart people who are yet to be broken down by the system. So you do get a skewed view. It's the rest of the people around who are more difficult.
Yes.
But they do think that they know best. And these are people who are often career civil servants. They don't know anything about the outside world. Very briefly, Nadim Zahawi, my old boss, did the vaccine rollout. He tried to explain to people there's already an existent logistics industry out there that could move these vaccines around the country. You don't have to rebuild all of this stuff from scratch, especially when you've got no know-how. We're banging our heads on the desk about this.
Yeah. I remember when Tony Blair first came into power, 97, there was a story that he... I assume it was the permanent secretary at the Department of Education. It was talking to him as obviously the top man, the Prime Minister. You know, what is it you're looking to do, Prime Minister? And he listed what fundamentally, you know, they want to achieve. And the civil servant said, yeah, that's doable. What's your time frame? And Blair said, well, maybe the next 6 to 9 months. And the civil servant said, 20 years. To do what you want to do is going to take 20 years. It's like, really?
That old sitcom, Yes, Minister?
Yes.
Not a sitcom. It's a documentary.
It's a documentary. Absolutely right. Just extraordinary stuff. Well, listen, this story is going to rumble on. Certainly the Abdel Fattah story, which we're taking lots of calls on, 0344 499 1000. We've got some great voices over the course of the show coming on to discuss this and the other big stories of the day as well. You can message us 87222 or drop us a voice note. James, thank you very much for coming in. Have a great New Year. Do you do the New Year thing?
I'm afraid so. I've been dragged into it. I'd much rather go to bed and be what's the New Year's version of Scrooge?
Yeah,
some are very dull about it and get up nice and early and feel smug.
Yeah, you don't do that.
I'm going to have to go and party.
You're going to go for
Someone's got to.
It's a 3-day bender for price, kids. James, we'll speak very soon. James Price with us on the programme, 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news at 7.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good morning. It might be Christmas, it might be New Year. It's that funny bit in the middle. I think there's a name for it, which is probably rather annoying. But the news agenda stops for no one. And, of course, this morning we wake up to more revelations about the people who were supporting well, a man who I could say, I think quite safely, had views that many people might find incompatible with our ways and values, and certainly incompatible with, I suppose, Western ideals. This is the story, of course, of Abdel Fattah, an alleged Islamist extremist who called for Zionists to be killed, has been welcomed back with open arms to the United Kingdom. Should this man just be deported now? Certainly the leader of the opposition is claiming that. Front pages this morning. There it is on the Mail. Kemi, I don't want people who hate our country coming here. I did notice, by the way, the Prime Minister, who put out a glowing comment saying, I'm delighted that he's back in the UK and reunited with his loved ones. He then sort of rode back a little bit and said, oh, you know, some of the things this man said were terrible. But he hasn't deleted that tweet. That still remains on the official Prime Minister Twitter feed, X feed, whatever you want to call it. Surely we just get rid of this bloke. I mean, he's got Egyptian nationality. Look, it was Egypt where the trouble started. He was given a pardon and released from jail back to the UK, where he's never really been a citizen. He was sort of cursory through some admin thing, given citizenship in 2021. Nobody can really work this stuff out. But if you want to have a look back at the kind of stuff this man was tweeting, it is exceptionally gross and outrageous. Or is it, wait for it, just hurty words? 0344 499 1000. Should he now just be deported? We're talking about that. Labour and their visa restrictions on a country. It's the first time they've imposed one. This is the Dominican Republic. They've decided, Congo, they've decided that because they're refusing to take back criminals and illegal migrants, then there will be visa restrictions on them. Well, it sounds fair enough. You might think that's the thing you'd do first, wouldn't you? You might think. More than 7 million NHS patients have faced waiting lists of 4 weeks or more between September and November, making it the worst autumn since records began. 7 million NHS patients waiting 4 weeks or more just to get an appointment. I mean, come on. How do we fix this thing? And by the way, if you're interested, Adam Peaty never did invite his mum to his own wedding. Have you ever been uninvited to something? Certainly in your own family. We'll take some comments on that. 87222 if you are messaging. And, of course, you can leave a voice note on 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word with Robert Taylor, political columnist and journalist. Robert, good afternoon, or good morning even, to you. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning, Ian.
I knew I'd do that at least once, and there it is. That's the first one. Nice to have you with us. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, and all the rest of it. Is it still Christmas in your house?
It's that, as you say, that weird in-between period, isn't it? I rather enjoy it. I used to hate it. I now rather enjoy it. But you're working, poor chap, so it's not so good for you, is it?
Yeah, but I get, because I'm doing this programme, I get the rest of the day off. So it kind of worked out in that respect. I did nip into, I had to do that thing. I've never done this. I went into a supermarket on Boxing Day. Because of the usual thing, you know, you got people coming round, something you've forgotten. Oh, no, we haven't got any gravy. So off I trot into the supermarket, still excited that it's the festive season. I walk into said supermarket, not a reference of Christmas. It had all gone. The tree had gone. The decorations had gone. The chocolate Santas had been consigned to a bargain bin somewhere in the corner. Christmas paper could be sold almost as if it was contraband. There was no reference to Christmas. They put New Year's stuff up, but I thought, really? I mean, Christmas should start, as far as I'm concerned, second week of November and go on to the second week of January.
Have you still got your Christmas tree up?
Oh, yes. That's going to be up till maybe July.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable, don't you?
Well, certainly, what happened to the 12 days of Christmas, Ian? I mean, isn't it meant to be 6th of January when we stop celebrating?
I think you're meant to take it all down by the 6th, aren't you? I think that's is that the protocol? Is it the 6th or is it the 5th?
I think that's the protocol, yeah.
There'll probably be a row over this now. Is it the 6th or the 5th? Or do you have to do it by midnight? And if you don't do it by midnight, what happens? Has no elves come to you for the rest of the Christmases ahead of you? Does your roof cave in? I don't know what the thinking is behind it. The 12th night is the 5th, I'm just being told, by Festive Finn.
OK, there we go.
So have them down by then, otherwise it's bad luck, bad karma for the rest of time. Let's look at more serious matters, Robert, and there's a lot of it out there at the moment. Keir Starmer, I think, is up to his neck in it now because, of course, he welcomed back this curious character called Abdul... I've lost his name. How can I... Abdul...
El Fattah.
El Fattah. Abdul El Fattah. He's back, of course, after spending some time in an Egyptian prison. Keir Starmer has said it's fantastic that he's back with us. Very, very happy about that. And then, of course, it was revealed that there's a whole ton of tweets that this man had written, which, just to give you a taster, say things like, I'm a violent person who advocates the killing of all Zionists, including civilians. And then there's a profanity that follows that. I consider killing any colonialist, especially Zionists, heroic. He says, I'm a racist. I don't like white people. I mean, the miserable list goes on. It is just extraordinary. And yet we have politician after politician who, for some reason, never checked this man's social media. I thought that was rule one in the current world we live in. Check what this man has said in the past, and then we'll make a decision. Nobody did that. So we had all sorts of people, including Keir Starmer, back in 2022. And this is a really interesting aspect if you listen to the specifics of what he said. Back in 2022, talking and highlighting the case of Abdel El Fattah. Let's have a listen.
And can I start by raising the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah? Yes. As the Prime Minister knows and has said, he's a British citizen, jailed for the crime of posting on social media and been imprisoned in Egypt for most of the last 9 years.
Well, I mean, I don't know where to tuck into this one, Robert. I mean, under his stewardship, lots of people have been jailed for crimes of posting things on social media. So there's that. That was him in opposition. He talks about him being a British citizen, kind of. I mean, he was given citizenship for some curious reason to get him out of jail, it seems, in Egypt back in 2021. But we've now discovered that this man is an absolute wrong-un.
Yeah, it's a real failure of the British state, it would seem. I mean, this guy's views on Twitter, as they were, or now X, were well known. He was denied some sort of European Human Rights Award in about 2014 or 2015 because of what he'd said on X. So it wasn't that this was particularly hidden from view. And yet he became this kind of priority for the government, the Tory government, as well as the Labour government, to get him British citizenship, to get him out of jail. And now, of course, it's profoundly embarrassing. And the weird thing here, Ian, is that it is so difficult, rightly, to get British citizenship. The hurdles you normally have to go through are actually quite immense, unless you come across the channel on a dinghy, of course. But this guy was effectively just sort of the red carpet rolled out for him because of some sort of loophole in our old friend, the European Convention on Human Rights, that meant that he didn't have to have proof of good character in order to get British citizenship. So this is a failure on multiple levels all along.
I mean, it really is. And now, of course, we're still sitting here with this welcome message that Starmer put out, which is still live on his feed on X. He hasn't taken that down, despite apparently Number 10 saying, oh, you know, we're slightly disturbed, I'm paraphrasing here, by what he wrote. But beyond that, the message, the welcome message still exists. I mean, Kemi Badenoch is saying, you know, we don't want people who hate our country coming here. This man apparently he hates the English, he hates the Dutch for some reason. I mean, what the heck have the Dutch ever done to anyone?
He hates a lot of people, according to his Twitter feed. Of course, Kemi Badenoch is right, but it was the Tories that gave him citizenship in the first place.
Yeah.
Labour has just put that whole process on steroids and sort of lobbied the Egyptian government to allow him to travel to Britain. And now this guy is in Britain. He says he doesn't like the British. He goes beyond just not liking the British. He says far worse things about that. Yet he's in our country. He's a citizen. And now I think it's, at the very least, the police, if they're going to be consistent, should go around and ask him what those ex-posts were all about. If you arrest Lucy Connolly for something, if you arrest Graham Linehan for a joke about the trans community,
correct,
then for goodness sake, you've got to see what this guy's about.
I mean, that says it all, really, doesn't it? You know, Graham Linehan was arrested literally at an airport where he was met off a plane as if he was some kind of serial killer, where there'd been a manhunt for him. I mean, what's that all about, for God's sake? So a bunch, I think there were 5 officers that arrested him. Whether there is a statute of limitations on tweets, I don't know. I can't imagine there is. But this would surely provoke a knock on the door from Plod, wouldn't it? To say, mate, we've had a look at your socials and it's pretty grim stuff. You're coming with us.
Well, consistency, police consistency would demand that, wouldn't it? I mean, personally, I don't think people should be put in prison for what they put on X. I really don't. I don't think it's a problem. But there are 2 things here. One, consistency. If you arrest Graham Linehan, you've got to arrest this guy. And secondly, why was he given British citizenship in the first place? He has extremely tenuous links to this country. I think he's only a British citizen because his mother was born here while her mother was studying in the UK temporarily. So there are really limited reasons for him to have British citizenship in the first place. But I think the more important point here, Ian, is police consistency.
Yeah. Indeed. And this story as well, and we are taking calls on this, and we'll go to some comment and voice notes. Should Abdel Fattah be deported? 0344 499 1000 if you want to leave a voice note there. I guess the wider issue as well, just before we move on, Robert, for me, and we're all guilty of a little bit of this, is when it comes to what you write on social media, there is a view that social media is different to anywhere else. So anything goes. You can say whatever you like, doesn't matter. Stick it on there. It's just, as it's often said, hurty words. Now, if that is what you normally advocate, does that mean you would let this guy off the hook?
Well, I would like to live in a world where hurty words don't lead you to a prison sentence of 2 years, as was the case with Lucy Connolly, or certainly being arrested at Heathrow Airport, as was the case with Graham Linehan. I don't think I'm a free speech purist, really, Ian. Yeah. I want to live in a society where people can say what they like. They have the freedom to offend people. That's part of free speech. All I'm looking for is consistency. Yeah. One rule for Lucy Connolly must also be applied to
absolutely
the other way.
And I would actually argue, I mean, this guy, because I've always said, yeah, pretty much anything goes, but if you are specifically advocating killing Alf at number 74 Arcadia Avenue, then, you know, maybe the police should have a word with you, because that sort of drifts into, you know it when you see it, right? You know that that's clearly a step too far, the same way as if you hired a billboard in the high street and wrote something, you know, Jeff, my work colleague, is a paedophile, and put it up in the high street, then I think Jeff might have reasonable grounds to sue the pants off you for it, unless, of course, he was. But you take the point. So but this guy has demonstrable evidence that the stuff he said is pretty grim. I mean, there's no getting around this. I'm a racist. I don't like white people. I'm a violent person who advocates the killing of all Zionists, including civilians. I mean, this is right up there.
It is right up there. It's very close to the edge of what you said is completely unacceptable. To use another example, you can't shout fire in a crowded theatre. That would clearly... Yes. That's free speech, but it would be clearly causing all sorts of human misery. So there are limits. I just think they should be very high, and the most important thing is they should be applied consistently.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this story. French police unions are rejecting disabling propellers and boats in Calais because of the danger that they face by doing so. So essentially, the authorities, the people in charge of trying to stop the boats leaving Calais, want no part of it, really, because they say it's too dangerous to be involved in this, because they become a target. Well, I thought that was the point of being the police.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's an irony here, is that they say it's too dangerous to immobilise these boats because people might drown while you're trying to immobilise them. So let these boats go across the channel in horrendous conditions and have people drown in the middle of the channel instead. I mean, it's not a very good way or a very humane way of looking at it. But the bigger issue here, of course, is that we were told by this Labour government that it was all incredibly easy. It was just a case of smashing the gangs and just getting rid of the unworkable, apparently, Rwanda solution. Well, what we've discovered, and the Labour government have discovered, is it's not that easy. Here we are, 18 months in, we've got more channel crossings than just about any of the previous few years.
Yep.
Smashing the gangs has got absolutely nowhere, and any initiative, if you could use that word, that Labour has tried, now that it's abolished Rwanda, is failing demonstratively.
Indeed. On that point, Robert, thank you for your time. Have a great new year. Always good to have you on. Robert Taylor, political journalist and columnist. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. Should this Abdel Fattah character just be deported? Where would they deport him to? Well, that would be the argument that will come forward. Well, where do we say? We can't send him to Egypt. He's just been rescued from Egypt would be the example. The idea that he's a British citizen is almost a technicality, and he's posted some stuff that is pretty grim. I mean, beyond grim, frankly, and I think we could reasonably argue quite dangerous. Do we just get rid of this character? You can imagine what Donald Trump would say in America if this fellow was coming in his direction. Lines are open on that and the other elements we're discussing as well. This is Talk.
You can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I haven't got time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people, then we can solve that problem like that.
You won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
this.
And
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. It's Morning Glory with Ian Collins. Siobhan says, very confused to hear you on the morning drive to Cornwall this morning. I hope there's very early morning trains from leafy Sevenoaks. Oh, darling, it's a player chauffeur, for goodness sake. It's a horse and carriage that brings me here in the morning. 6 of them. Think of that parade up the Mall when there's a coronation. That out of Sevenoaks. I wish. One in here from Just Me who says, I don't know why the media are getting flustered over this Egyptian's threatening tweets when we already have thousands just like him already here. The death to the IDF guy, for example. Our enemies are being ferried in every week. That's a fair point as well. I guess what makes this perhaps a little more illuminating is not just the invitation, the open invite, you have to bring this man back. It's the celebration of him coming back as well. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And then when they all realise, oh my God, this guy's a bit iffy. This guy's a bit of a dodgepot. You put me back on font 11, Finn. I don't know what you're doing here. Do you want me to buy new glasses or something? I think you do. He said, Labour have imposed visa restrictions on the Democratic Republic of Congo for refusing to take back criminals and illegal migrants, so stripping its diplomats and ministers of preferential treatment and ending fast-track entry for its citizens. The Home Office branded the country obstructive, citing refusals to accept returns, including violent and sex offenders. Let's get a word with Henry Bolton, International Border Control expert. Good afternoon to you, Henry. Is this a rare example of our government trying to do the right thing?
Very, very, very weakly, and good morning.
Morning.
The problem with this is that these 3 countries are so insignificant in this regard that this is an almost meaningless gesture. I mean, it covers foreign national offenders as well, the return of them. If we look at that, there are 87,000 people in British prisons, 56 of them from the DRC, 39 from Angola and 9 from Namibia. There are no sanctions being put against Namibia and Angola because they've agreed to make certain changes. Fine. The so-called sanctions against the Democratic Republic of Congo are twofold. One, their VIPs won't get VIP treatment when they arrive at Heathrow Airport or wherever. In other words, they won't get a minibus from the plane to some VIP lounge. I mean, this is not a big deal. And if we really want to look at countries that we have a problem returning people to, it's not these 3. It's countries like India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia. But why hasn't the government taken action against these countries where we have a far greater problem in terms of the numbers and in the opposition to returning people there? It's because these countries have a far bigger diplomatic presence in the United Kingdom. They have a far bigger population in the United Kingdom, and a great proportion of that population supports Labour councillors and Labour MPs. So, it is a failure of moral courage and leadership combined with throwing us, the British public, a bit of a bone. It's another almost meaningless measure.
Yeah, and I was wondering about visa restrictions on the Democratic Republic of Congo. I mean, what are who are the likely people that would be would fall foul, who are hoping to come to the UK? I mean, are we talking about scientists and engineers? What is that kind of visa entry to the UK? What does it even look like from that country?
There are two sort of effectively in this respect, 2 types of visa issuance. There's the normal process, and typically you pay a lesser fee for that, and then you can get your visa fast-tracked. Now, there are 2 types of people who generally would want a fast-track visa, and that is international businessmen who are shooting all around the world, and they can't wait. They've got a business meeting tomorrow in wherever it is, and they will pay a higher fee for a fast-track visa. Now, these fast-track visas will not be available to people from the DRC, to Congolese people at the moment under these sanctions. So that's the primary restriction. So it's ordinary people wanting to travel are going to be getting a visa through the normal process, and it's not going to affect them at all.
Henry, while you're with us, just a word on something Nigel Farage has been talking about: stripping pensions from civil servants who enable dangerous foreign offenders to enter Britain. It's a radical claim. I don't know how doable it is. Naturally, this can only come into fruition if he became the Prime Minister. What's behind this, and could he achieve this?
Well, it's driven by this individual, whatever his name is. I'm not terribly good with the Arabic names, I'm sorry. Who the Prime Minister has been sort of glorifying or celebrating his return.
Yeah, Abdel Fattah.
Yeah, Abdel Fattah, thank you very much. Not very clever, the Prime Minister, but it's driven by that. I understand it's partly driven by the number of foreign national sex offenders in the United Kingdom. And these people, not just the theory, the principle is shouldn't be in the United Kingdom. They pose a threat to British people. Well, so Nigel's got that right, but people should be aware that in the United Kingdom you cannot apply law retrospectively. So any civil servant who has let somebody in to the point at time, for example, a reform government introduces new legislation, those people cannot be dealt with. The other thing is that British immigration rules are the problem here, not corrupt officials. The problem is that Home Office guidelines for accepting asylum claims allow the acceptance of asylum claims from people who've got criminal offences, from people who've expressed extremist views, because the benchmark, if you like, is whether or not they have a reasonable case that they would be at danger of death or persecution or torture in whatever country they want to leave. So honestly, in my mind, Ian, the problem must be dealt with. I'm not ambiguous about that whatsoever. We need to be ruthless about stopping people who are a danger to the public coming in. But the solution lies not in new legislation in this regard and sort of going to war with the civil service. It lies in tightening up the Home Office guidelines that such people apply when considering asylum cases.
It's quite a bonkers. Well, here comes the understatement of the year. It's quite a bonkers setup we've designed, isn't it? Where you'd think if you were starting from scratch and you were looking at who's allowed to come to the UK, who's not allowed to come to the UK. If somebody comes from a foreign country and they commit a terrible offence, what then happens? Somebody has deliberately constructed a system that keeps bad people here, as distinct from the one that a 5-year-old could work out, that if you've got a bad person, you get rid of the bad person, and every avenue to do that should be a very well-oiled machine, and it could happen within 10 minutes of discovering that you've got a wrong 'un on your doorstep.
Yeah, indeed. It's not been deliberately designed. I think what's happened is it's evolved, and along that evolution, because there's been a total lack of strategic leadership from successive governments keeping an eye on these things and sort of identifying whether something's going off course or not. Things like the European Convention on Human Rights have watered things down so that the United Kingdom, like any other country, does not want to have ECHR rulings against it, judgments against it. So what it does is it applies internal legislation, domestic guidelines and rules and so on, and procedures to avoid that happening. In other words, we don't need the ECHR to tell us that we've made a wrong decision. We preempt that happening by avoiding making the wrong decision anyway. That makes us more and more liberal. And then we have, again, for the last 25 years or more, we've been a country whose politicians and political parties have moved to the centre, become more and more liberal, catered for that liberal vote. And that liberal vote is I'm sorry, but it's a very, very naive one. I've travelled all around the world to the countries that these people come from. Yep. They come from an entirely different culture where lying is normal. I don't even have to judge it. I use that phrase a lot. They are different cultures, just simply different. Lying is normal. Lying is sometimes praiseworthy if it gains you particular benefit. So it's a cultural issue where different types of behaviour and behavioural norms, social norms towards women, children, each other, are entirely at variance with our own. Yeah. And the naivety of the liberal class has meant that over years, our ability to protect ourselves from people who are a direct danger to the British public has been eroded to the point that it's ludicrous, it's scandalous. And I've called it in the past the greatest scandal in Britain in the 21st century. And there's a lot of scandals out there.
Yeah, it's a wide old subject matter, that one. Henry, thank you as ever. Have a cracking new year. Great to have you on. Henry Bolton, international border control expert. Your thoughts on what you heard Henry say there as well. 03444991000. The question, should Abdel Fattah now be deported? I think the only answer to that is absolutely. The questions that will be coming back at you is, well, where do you deport him to? Thoughts on that? You can voice notice on the same number as well, or message 87222. Just gone 7:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 8. Some comments from you coming through. This from Dave in Bristol. He says, Ian, the views expressed by El Fattah are not just close to the edge. They've gone far past the edge. As you alluded, hurty words are one thing, but consequences, or likely consequences, must be firmly considered. And that is usually the... I mean, again, does it all come down to whether you specifically agree? When somebody tweets something and it's a bit off, as Dave is alluding, you can say, well, OK, it's hurty words. They're not always everybody's flavour of words, but could they lead to something else? That's how Connolly found herself in the chiller on the kind of incitement issue. And I think El Fattah is in that department. Dave says, there are many disturbed and unpredictable people who will take social media posts as a call to arms or permission to commit serious acts of violence. There's also the cancelling of people following social media criticism, whether valid or not, like your guest mentioned, shouting fire in a crowded theatre would be considered extremely dangerous and possibly unlawful when the consequences are considered. The principle of social media posts carry the same possible consequences and realistically must be a consideration in any discussion on freedom of speech. That's absolutely bang on. And you look at social media and you are torn, but in so many directions on this. You have governments that do press conferences on social media. So it kind of legitimises the platform and you think, OK, that makes perfect sense. But then you have a litany of just individuals throwing out all manner of outrageous slurs and libels and, you know, not very nice things, sometimes, as Dave alluded to, going over the line. Happens on a second-by-second basis. So it's a confusing space in terms of what social media stands for, what it's meant to be. I saw a former police officer that released a video talking about the demise of David Walliams. And in the video, he talked about, but there's another celebrity that, you know, is known for X, Y, and Z. Keep your eyes peeled for that one. Now, of course, what then followed were loads of people having a guess at who the other celebrity was. Some of them even including the Twitter handle of the person they're accusing. Now, this is mostly direct libel that you could be sued for. And you think, well, doesn't everybody know that? Doesn't by now, aren't we all aware that there are lines that you have to draw, whether it's incitement, whether it's something litigious and libelous, whatever? Don't we all know that? But no, we really don't. And the temptation for me to respond to a couple of them going, mate, you might want to take that down. You've literally just accused somebody of being a sex offender. You can't do that. So we have to work on the basis that actually, even though you think everybody knows the T's and C's and the rules and the regs, they don't. And that's the world we're in. Do you trust it? Does it matter? Has this man overstepped a mark? I think he has overstepped a mark. Will he get a knock on the door? Will he be deported? Should he be deported? 0344 499 1000. Now, down Florida way, it's all going off. Donald Trump hosting Vladimir Zelensky's arrival at Mar-a-Lago said security guarantees to end the war are 95% done. And a deal is a lot closer after a call with Vladimir Putin. What does that deal even look like? He suggested it could take a few weeks to finalise and signalled a likely trilateral meeting between Zelensky, Putin and, of course, himself. Where does this go? Philip Ingram, if I can put my teeth in. Former senior military intelligence officer, regular with us here on Talk, of course. Philip, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. So we've sort of been here before a little bit on many things, whether it's Israel and what's going on with Gaza, and in this case, of course, right at the top of the agenda, the stopping of the Ukraine war. Is there good reason to believe they are closer than they've previously said when they said we are close?
Well, if you believe Donald Trump, we are closer. If you believe what President Zelensky is saying, we are closer. But in reality, that is, I think, just talk for the cameras and talk for each other. I don't think we're any closer whatsoever because Vladimir Putin hasn't changed his position one little bit.
Yeah.
And it takes two to tango when it comes to negotiating.
And that's the problem, isn't it? The one person that seems to be completely immovable on this is Vladimir Putin. And there's never been any sense of... I know Zelensky has made similar claims that, we're not giving up land because it's already our land. Mm-hmm. But there is a sort of... You get a feeling that maybe there's a sort of malleableness that could see Zelensky perhaps having some wiggle room of his own. We don't see that with Putin. We don't see that at all.
Yeah, Zelensky's given a lot of wiggle room, over land. He has said from the very, very early stages that he recognises he cannot take back what Russia has captured by military force alone, and it was willing to park that to be dealt with diplomatically at some stage in the future. In the same way that Germany was reunified, in the same way that Korea is still divided, but there's a potential diplomatic solution at some stage in the future. But President Putin of Russia hasn't moved one bit. He wants the whole of the Donbass. At the moment, he's got about 80% of Donetsk, a region in Ukraine, which is part of the disputed Donbass. The British Defence Intelligence has suggested it would take, at the rates of advance that the Russians have done over the last 4 years, it would take them at least another 4 years and 2 million casualties to get the rest. And it's just not practical for the Russians to capture it militarily. But Putin believes he can.
So will this, does your instinct tell you, Philip, that this will end up in Putin's favour?
Well, it could end up in Putin's favour. It all depends on where Donald Trump goes. And it'll then put President Zelensky in a very difficult position and European leaders in a difficult position because President Zelensky, under the Ukrainian constitution, cannot give up any land. And that would send a hugely dangerous precedent around the world if he was forced to do that. But if he tried to, he said any deal would have to go to a referendum, and he's asked as part of the 20-point plan that there was a ceasefire for a referendum. The Russians have already rejected that, and therefore at every stage the Russians are rejecting any option for Ukraine to do anything that allows them to exercise the law under the Ukrainian constitution. And that makes it very, very difficult. So we could see Donald Trump walking away and walking away with very noisily, or he could turn around and try and punish Vladimir Putin, which is what he should do.
Indeed. It's a wait-and-see moment. Of course, he talks about this trilateral meeting between himself, Zelensky and Putin. I mean, I guess that's where ultimately this will end up. I can't imagine that's a very comfortable place to be, but you'd like to be a fly on the wall.
Definitely like to be a fly on the wall. You know, this war will end in dialogue. Every conflict ends in dialogue. Yeah. Whether that dialogue is forced into a full surrender, or whether that dialogue is in a compromise of some description. But the dialogue, if you're going to have the compromise solution, both sides need to compromise. In the past 4 years, the only compromise that Vladimir Putin has had to deal with is where he's been forced to do it. He was forced out of Kyiv. He was forced to concentrate on the east. Yeah. He now believes he can still win in the east militarily. He can't. He needs to learn to compromise.
Indeed. Philip, thank you as ever. Have a great new year. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, with us on the programme. Comment from you on our first question. Should Abdel Fattah, this is the Egyptian, he's not really British, he's got citizenship. It was a token administrative thing back in 2021. Should he be deported? Now we've realised the enormity, the depths, the horror of this man's true opinions. Mary in Canterbury says, we're up in arms again about something this government has done, but tomorrow everyone will have forgotten about it. Nothing will be done. This is an absolute disgrace. And you do wonder about that. Will anything be done? Pete the Mole says, Will Al Fattah, is he getting benefits yet? And who paid to get him into this country? Who paid the airfare? We would have paid the airfare, I would imagine. I mean, Egypt gave him a pardon. I don't imagine they paid for the airfare. We'll watch with interest. David is in Gloucestershire. What have you got for us, David? Morning to you.
Morning, Ian. How are we all?
Yeah, we're all good at this end. What are you thinking?
Well, I know it's a horrible thing to say, but I really do believe this government and successive governments before, they're not doing anything to stop an atrocity in this country, and they'll be happy when one's happened. It's almost like Starmer wants something like that to happen so he can wander around with a flat jacket and a helmet on. You think he'll be popular.
Why do we not see... I keep banging on about this, David, as you might be aware. This idea, we don't have politicians that get angry. We don't have politicians, and again, say what you like about Trump. When this kind of stuff happens, or they've discovered there were some military personnel that were killed a couple of months ago, and Trump's absolute outrage at this and the person responsible was there for all to see. We're not getting that. In fact, the only real comment from Keir Starmer is that they're glad this man is back in the UK. He's since acknowledged the unsavoury nature of the man's social media history. But you want to see Starmer on the steps of Number 10 getting bloody angry, don't you?
Well, exactly. And I mean, these lovey, Phil Nye and all these different, these so-called celebrities. I mean, I don't, you wouldn't wipe your shoe with them, but quite frankly, if that's who they think is a good person, I mean, I didn't know anything about it until yesterday morning when I heard, was it Kevin O'Sullivan first thing banging on about this guy.
Yep.
But and within 30 seconds, you're like, oh my God, what the hell are we doing? Why the hell was he even given a British citizenship? It's just crazy.
And this goes across, I know it's great to blame the socialists in power at the moment because their levels of giddy ineptitude just, keep on giving. But this predates, of course, Starmer. This goes back. There's comments from James Cleverly on this. Liz Truss was also one of those people. And nobody at the time, even back then, this is in the last sort of, 5-8 years, they could have been aware of his views. They would have been aware of his views, or should have been aware of his views, but nobody was. And everyone was just talking about, we've got to get this poor guy back.
Well, it's like they just keep going on about the poor guy. And I mean, okay, if you take one view, you say, oh, you know, he's a you know, deciding to call him an author and blah blah blah. Like I think you said earlier.
Yes, he's like he's Salman flipping Rushdie, and he's not. He's a man with a horrendous, lethal, extremist, racist, anti-Semitic views, and he was quite happy to share them forever to the rest of the world. He wasn't even hiding his views on this. Listen, Dave, I've got to move on for no other reason than time. Thank you for that. It's not just politicians, of course. Celebrities love to get involved. You want to hear the good and the great from the thespian world about support for this man, Abdel Fattah. Now, admittedly, these people might also not have known his social media past when they said all of this, but it's worth having a reminder of how we react to extremism when it comes to theatre folk. Have a listen.
Prime Minister Starmer.
Dear Prime Minister Starmer.
Dear Prime Minister Starmer.
Dear Prime Minister Starmer.
Prime Minister, I'm making this video because I, like a lot of people, and I should imagine yourself included, are deeply concerned.
Dear Prime Minister, I'm reaching out to you today because I'm extremely worried.
I am one of many thousands in Britain and all around the world who are deeply concerned about the fate of the writer Alaa Abdel Fattah.
The brilliant, courageous and inspiring writer who has been unjustly imprisoned in Egypt for far, far too many years.
Brian Cox, Bill Nighy and a crock of others. Yeah, get this poor writer, about like some sort of academic who's been jailed for his views or subverting the conventions of a twisted regime. The list goes on. We now know he's a complete wrong. He's got no right to be here, shouldn't be here, should be kicked out. Where does he go? What do we do? Is there another option? 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on that number as well, or call. And of course, you can message 87222. It's just coming up on 10 to 8. This is Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, yes, welcome back to the home of common sense. Thank you to Maggie, who says, I woke up to see you and thought I'd overslept. So once again, our so-called dangerous leader hadn't seen this dangerous vile man's tweets, another thing that hadn't crossed his desk. Funny that. And where is our so-called leader, by the way? Yeah, there are departments. This is Downing Street, by the way. You know, it's not some little back office of an accountancy firm. They have social media departments. They have God knows how many advisors there that could look through. And so let's just check out the views of this guy. You know, we know how many people have had a knock on the door from Plod in this country because of things they've said. This was a man that was controversial, already controversial. That was known. He'd been refused an award because of his views in the past. None of this crossed the desk of the Prime Minister when he put out a tweet suggesting that was saying that I'm delighted that Alaa Abdel Fattah is back in the UK, reunited with his families, who must be feeling profound relief. I want to pay tribute to his family and all of those that have worked and campaigned for this moment. This is a man that wants to kill Jews and white people and God knows who else. He's a horrific character. Somehow, that bit never got the memo over there. Yes, now Maggie, on your earlier point, by the way, because it's Christmas, schedules go up and down, and they always do. So I'm here for 4 days this week, and then, of course, Jeremy Kyle kicks in good and proper on Monday, next Monday, a week today, with the brand new breakfast show. Now, let's move to this story. I had to kind of read this twice when I saw it. Road safety experts urging an inquiry after new data shows how motorists are 3 times more likely to die in hybrid crashes than in cars than in petrol cars, with 122 hybrid fatalities versus 777 in petrol cars last year, despite hybrids being outnumbered by nearly 20 to 1. There's a disproportionality. What do we read into this? Stuart Masson, editorial director at The Car Expert, is with us. Morning to you, Stuart.
Good morning, Ian. How you doing?
Very good. Nice to have you with us. I mean, it's an extraordinary story. Do we make anything of this? Is it just like they've crunched the numbers and it's just unfortunate that on this particular data set, this is what's come out? Or is there something significantly and profoundly dangerous about a hybrid car?
There's absolutely nothing significantly and profoundly dangerous about a hybrid car. What we don't know is how this data has come to pass. So is it because of other reasons? All we know is that we need to look into it, really. What it's showing is that 122 people died in hybrid cars last year in the UK, and that's higher than the rate of other cars. And why is this happening? It's not likely to be because of the cars themselves. It's more likely to be how they're being used, when they're being driven, where they're being driven, who they're being driven by, that are causing issues. I mean, 90% of all car accidents and fatalities are caused by drivers, one way or another. Mm-hmm. So if there are more accidents in these type of cars, it's more likely to be issues with drivers than the cars themselves. But at this stage, there's been no indication of why that is. It's just we've noticed this data and we need to look into why.
Yeah, I mean, it got me thinking, do people drive hybrid cars in a different way? Do they run off with the idea that they've got some kind of automation so they don't have to pay as much attention because it's a hybrid car? I mean, could it be, it sounds daft saying it out loud, but might it be something like that?
It's probably not what it's like. I mean, hybrid cars have tended to be used for many years now as private taxis, Ubers and so on. So it means you get hybrid cars doing a lot of miles, rural miles, late nights. So it may be that that's more of an issue. We don't know whether these accidents are taking place on rural roads at higher speeds. Are they taking place later night? Are they city accidents that involve pedestrians? We don't have that data yet. All we've got is data that shows the car type and the number of accidents. We don't know if it's some hybrids tend to be driven by older drivers. Now, I'm not saying older drivers are more likely to have accidents, but if they do have an accident, they are at a higher risk of fatality than younger people. So there could be a number of reasons, and we don't have that. The article in this came up in the Daily Mail was actually a fairly poor article that stitched together a load of connected issues. But really, we have no idea. But it certainly merits looking at.
Is there a known safest car out there?
As a rule, cars tend to be safer in terms of crash testing and accident avoidance than older cars. So the newest cars hitting the road have to meet higher standards. The world's toughest safety organisation, Euro NCAP, measures cars and they improve their standards every year. They're enhancing their standards again in 2026 with a whole new suite of tests and measurements. So newer cars hit higher standards than older cars. So the newer the car, chances are the better the car. As cars get older, it also depends on how well they're being maintained. Simple things like tyres and brakes. But ultimately, most road safety comes down to the driver.
Indeed, every day of the week, isn't it? It's driver error is, almost invariably the cause of any crash, fatal or otherwise. Stuart, thank you for your time, sir. Happy New Year. Great to have you on with us. Stuart Masson, editorial director at The Car Expert, with us on the programme. I'll tell you something I hadn't... we live in a world now where there's a lot of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. But I hadn't been on a long journey into London until this morning, when the cab picked me up. So it's about an hour to get here from where I live. And as you come in to the capital city, and whilst I've been driving for years in London and experienced, in fact, I even got pulled over once in a 20-mile-an-hour zone at about 2 in the morning because I was going slightly too fast and hadn't realised it was a 20. So I overtook an unmarked police car. Not the best thing to do. The lights went on, they had a swift word, and that was it. But now everywhere is a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And when you're driving and the roads are absolutely dead, 20 miles an hour feels like something from 200 years ago. It's like we've gone backwards. Nobody can really establish, well, it's safer, isn't it? You could extend that argument, so we'll make it 10 miles an hour. In fact, let's just go on bicycles. 20 mile an hour. That feels like, what are we doing? I'm going up the old Kent Road. There's no one on it but me in the back of a cab. And we're doing 20. What's wrong with these people? Our lines are open. Let's get the news headlines. It's 8 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Yes, welcome back. Good morning. Lots to get through here. We are, of course, talking... Well, there's many things on the agenda. The curious case of the Prime Minister, who's facing growing calls to strip British citizenship from Abdel Fattah. This is the Egyptian, although he's technically he was given British citizenship in 2021. An alleged Islamist extremist who's called for Zionists to be killed, doesn't like white people, doesn't like the police, but welcome back with open arms like he was Gandhi, returning to the homeland by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's tweet referencing how happy he is to have him back in the UK is still up there, by the way. Number 10 have not removed this. Neither did Number 10 think to look back at some of the horrendous things he had said. We'll talk more on that. Should this man just simply be deported? Kemi Badenoch is calling for that. 0344 499 1000. Also, in other areas, more than 7 million NHS patients have waited weeks, 4 weeks or more. This is the data between September and November. It makes it the worst autumn since records began in 2019. Can't see a GP, can't get to the A. What's going on? They promised they were going to sort this. Nothing like it is happening so far. Donald Trump has said that the deal to end the war in Ukraine was 95% done. This was after an afternoon of negotiations with the Ukrainian president and that 75-minute call that Mr. Trump had with Vladimir Putin yesterday. What's likely to happen there? Do you have faith that this is finally peace in our times? Details on that, all the breaking news, everything you need to know, 0344 499 1000. 8:05. Let's get a word on a couple of issues here. Danny Kruger, MP for Reform UK, Reform UK for East Wiltshire. In fact, MP for East Wiltshire. Have I got that right, Danny?
Well done. Yeah.
I know I get there in the end. It's just a combination of words, really, isn't it? It's like a quiz at Christmas. Get them in the right order and I'll win a banana or something. Listen, great to have you with us. Just a word, if you would, on this curious issue, as I was just saying, about Keir Starmer, who's maintained his position that he's very happy that this Abdel Fattah has been welcomed back into the United Kingdom, despite a catalogue of some of the most horrendous things I think I've ever seen written in this area, which eluded the Prime Minister, eluded Number 10. They either knew about it and did nothing or didn't know anything about it at all. Either way, it's a bad look.
It is a bad look, and I'm afraid the responsibility rests with both the Conservatives and Labour. For many years now, both parties have been calling for him to be brought to the UK. The Conservatives gave him citizenship a few years ago, and it speaks of a general failure of the Home Office to do the most basic checking. I mean, this was public information, what this man had said about killing Jews and the police and so on. He was denied some kind of prize about 10 years ago because of these comments he'd made. So it wasn't a secret, but it's a part of a broader problem, which is that the Home Office is so keen to wave applications through, whether it's for citizenship in this case or for asylum in the case of people coming in to this country illegally, being pushed to do so by ministers who are more concerned either to signal their humanitarian instincts to the world or to speed up the backlog of asylum cases, that they're prioritising the interests of people who are plainly enemies of this country over the interests of the British people.
And it does seem, and of course this predates Mr. Starmer, your previous party, I can see why you legged it for the hills now, of course comes out no better in this. Everybody from James Cleverly to Liz Truss, who had previously said, you know, this is an outrage that this man is languishing in an Egyptian jail. It's worth having a little listen in a moment to the Prime Minister, what he said in opposition, but it goes cross-party, this, Danny.
It does, and as I say, there's a general failure of government, and that's why reform is so committed to gripping the system. We want to deport illegal migrants. We want to ensure that people who are enemies of this country do not get given citizenship in this case. The way to do that is to ensure that ministers are properly responsible for what officials in the Home Office do, and that they are properly responsible to Parliament. And that's the programme of change that we've started to announce. I mean, certainly this man needs to be deported immediately, but we've also announced that we're going to ensure that civil servants who wave through applications for asylum from people who are known sex offenders are themselves prosecuted for putting British people in danger. I've announced plans to reduce the size of the civil service to ensure that we have a much more productive and efficient and lean Whitehall machine. But fundamentally, it comes down to ministerial responsibility. And what you've got here, and you'll no doubt hear it from Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch and others, is that ministers weren't properly in charge of the Home Office. They didn't know what was happening. It's nothing to do with them. That's not an acceptable excuse.
Yeah, it's all, I've never quite been able to get to the bottom of this, because I can speak to a minister or a former minister who they would say, well, actually, we don't really have a lot of power. It's all in the civil service. Right. The civil service will sometimes say, well, no, it's ministers ultimately that call the shots. Well, your experience of being a politician, Danny, which way round is it? Who is in charge?
Well, I'm afraid it is the system. It is the what we call the deep state. So it's civil servants who think they're doing the right thing, that they regard themselves as good public servants. And I don't want to comment on their personal sort of loyalties, but fundamentally they are serving a different different agenda to that of the British people. They're serving international human rights law. They're serving the processes and crucially the culture, the sort of attitudes of the senior civil service, which regards itself as obeying a broader sort of global humanitarian vision rather than putting the British people first. And then they hide behind ministerial accountability. And it is the ministers who have to go out on the media, go into Parliament and defend the policy. But as you say, so often ministers feel that they're not really setting the policy. They don't necessarily understand it and they don't know what's going on the ground. That's the fundamental problem with our democracy. And it's why people are so desperate for change and why, you're right, I left the Conservatives because I recognise the Conservatives have not and cannot deliver the change that we need. We need a new force to step up and to grip the system, and that's what we're planning to do as we look forward to the next election.
Yeah, and I was discussing this with a previous guest as well, Danny, that the system has clearly been set up. It's this pervasive thing called groupthink, isn't it, that seems to have snaked its way around the civil service for decades, retaining the status quo at all costs. Let's not mess with the system. Let's go for this, and as you rightly say, with a nod to more kind of global arrangements as distinct from anything else. And it's just stayed that way, and I don't know whether it's too big to challenge, whether previous governments have looked at it and said, let's not get involved, we can open up a can of worms. I imagine the phrase open up a can of worms is used on an hourly basis in the Home Office in particular, but also across departments, because they know, which is why they got so grumpy about Brexit, of course, because it meant they'd actually have to do some work over there in the various departments to align things with our new status. But that, I think, is, it's almost that simple. It's actually it's easy to understand what's gone wrong, and no one's bothered in the past to try and put it right.
Yes, and what's significant, I think, about what Reform are trying to do, what we believe in, is we want to just get the system back that we thought we had, which is ministers accountable to Parliament are in charge and the civil service do what they're asked to. And the problem we have here is a system that is essentially unaccountable. And it's gone on for 25 years. Blair started it, creating this great sort of quango state, outsourcing responsibility to non-departmental government bodies. And then within the Home Office as well, which is this great fundamental Department of State, you have directorates that are not properly accountable to ministers. That said, let's not let ministers off the hook. Part of the problem we've seen, particularly with the processing of asylum applications, is because ministers are so worried about the backlog and the cost of the hotels that they're putting these illegal migrants in. They're just saying speed up the applications, and it's much quicker to approve an application than to reject it, by the way. So we've seen whistleblowers saying they have been told to grant asylum to people who they know would be a danger to this country, who have sex offences on their record, and they're told by their managers, no, wave them through because we've got to get on with this, we've got to clear the backlog. So there is political pressure on civil servants too. I don't think that's an adequate excuse. No civil servant should be allowed to say, I was just following orders here. They should not be rubber stamping applications for sex offenders to come to this country, and we will hold them personally responsible for that in future. So there's a combination of political failure, ministers not doing their job properly, and a civil service machine that isn't really accountable to the people.
Is this, assuming that, according to the polls, Reform will become the next government, if that comes to fruition, is this going to be your brief, Danny? Have you got an exclusive for us, the Home Office, your department? Can we say that safely now, live on air?
No. Nigel hasn't indicated anything about what jobs anyone's going to have. I have a really brilliant job now, which is preparing for government. So I'm responsible for thinking about how we're going to implement our plans. And that's this topic, really. It's about how the civil service works to execute the decisions of the government and to implement the manifesto. How are we going to ensure the civil service and the judicial system as well doesn't frustrate what the public want?
Yeah, and that's fair enough. Is there a role? I'm bound to ask now we've opened up, let's use that phrase, a can of worms. What is the role, Danny, you see yourself in a future government? You're clearly an experienced parliamentarian.
Thank you. Well, I don't expect any role. We'll just wait and see. Obviously, if Nigel becomes Prime Minister, he has to put his own government together at that point. One important point to make is, if there's a competition for jobs, it's going to be a wider one than just sitting MPs. So Nigel has been very clear that he wants to bring in talent from outside. I think that's a really good principle. Other countries do this. They make ministers from people who are not serving politicians. They're experts in their field. He's looking particularly for people with experience in business, in public service leadership, in the military, to come forward and offer their services to the next government. So I think it's going to be a very interesting pool of talent that Nigel's drawing on, and he's not indicated what jobs anyone's going to have at this point.
On that point, Danny, great to have you on, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Have a lovely new year. Danny Kruger, MP for East Wiltshire for Reform UK. Your thoughts on what you just heard there. More comment coming in from you. Chris says, Starmer is saying he knew nothing of the guy's tweets. Back to his normal lying again. Also, the Tories gave this man British citizenship, so let's not hear the lies from them either. Reform gets my vote. Can we just have a listen, by the way, to Keir Starmer talking in opposition on this issue of Abdel Fattah when he was languishing, I think that's the phrase you're meant to use, in an Egyptian jail. Politicians from all parties were up in arms about this. It's terrible that this man is there. But listen carefully to specifically Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition, this is, speaking in the House of Commons in 2022. Here it is.
And can I start by raising the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah? As the Prime Minister knows and has said, he's a British citizen, jailed for the crime of posting on social media and been imprisoned in Egypt for most of the last 9 years.
For tweets. It's interesting. What kind of government would lock people up for Oh, hang on a sec. It'll come to me in a moment. Well, there's two things there. There is the kind of ironic nature of our Prime Minister getting animated about a country jailing people for tweets. But it also surely unravels a knowledge of the man's tweets, right? I mean, yeah, he would have known that this man was writing things like, I'm a violent person who advocates the killing of all Zionists, including civilians, so F off. I consider killing any colonialists, especially Zionists, heroic. He says, I'm a racist. I don't like white people. I mean, did all the bad ones get removed when ministers and shadow ministers had a look through his social media history? It's very easy to find. It's all out there for anyone to see. Apparently not. And in fact, Keir Starmer, despite, and I have to assume, either he is stupid or he chose not to listen, despite knowing that this man had said stuff like that. He says, I'm delighted to have this man back in the UK. Back in the UK. Has he ever been in the UK, for goodness sake? He was granted citizenship in 2021. He's an Egyptian-born national. We granted him citizenship under the Tories for reasons that are slightly unclear. But Mr Starmer, despite this man's rather curious way of giving his opinion on things, has said that I'm delighted. I want to pay tribute to his family and all those who've worked and campaigned for this moment. His case has been a top priority for my government since we came to office. I'm grateful to President Sisi, Egypt, for his decision to grant the pardon. It's been a top priority to get this man into this country. That's been a top priority, to get a man who says, I'm a racist, I don't like white people, killing colonialists and Zionists is heroic, and I'm a violent person. And that was your top priority, Mr. Starmer. I mean, wow. The opposition don't fare much better on this, but they're not currently the government. And by the way, those words of Keir Starmer that I was just quoting there about his delight that this man is back in the UK is still on his Twitter account. It's still there. Unreal. On this very point, let's get a voice note from James.
Good morning, Ian. Now, Starmer said that his top priority was to get this guy from Egypt back. How about your top priority, Mr. Starmer, is keeping British citizens safe by stopping these sodding boats coming over here? Just a thought.
James, spot on. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. We'll take more calls, voice notes and messages from you coming next on Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say.
So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome. Good morning. It is Morning Glory with Ian Collins for 4 days this week. By the way, Jeremy Carl's new breakfast show starts a week today right here at the home of Common Sense. Peter says, morning Ian, Happy New Year to you. I'm not a betting man, but I would put my house on the fact that this bloke won't be heading for Egypt anytime soon. This is the curious case of Abdel Fattah. There are now calls for him to be deported. Well, he's just been released and pardoned in Egypt to come here. Well, he's not really a citizen. Technically, they gave him, some, for reasons nobody can quite work out, citizenship. Nonetheless, there he is, back and welcomed with open arms. by the Prime Minister, who's very relieved that he's back. He described getting him out of Egypt as one of his government's top priorities. Clearly, he didn't see the memo, which would have been in one of those red boxes somewhere, telling him, you are aware, Prime Minister, of the kind of stuff this man thinks. Let's speak with Chris Philp, MP, Shadow Home Secretary. Chris, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
I mean, this is an extraordinary story. I mean, we can all understand how someone's past might not be, in the public domain like it is right now. However, this is the Prime Minister. It is number 10. There are huge teams of people that are employed as advisors and social media departments. You'd thought somebody might have just done a little check on this man's views. And bearing in mind there had been previous flags raised about whether he was worthy of an award, and they decided he wasn't because of his past comments on things. But he's been welcomed like Mother Teresa back to the UK. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's completely... This man is a scumbag. He is clearly racist against white people. He described white people as dogs. He said he hated us. He's expressed anti-Semitic views, calling for Jewish civilians to be murdered. He's called for Downing Street to be burned down. He's called for the police in Britain to be attacked. The man is a complete scumbag. And if I were Home Secretary, then I would be today revoking his British citizenship, leaving him with his Egyptian citizenship, and deporting him straight back to Egypt. Because people who express these racist, anti-Semitic, extremist views have no place in the UK. And frankly, not just this scumbag, but anyone who expresses those kind of views, who is not a British citizen, should be deported. And anyone with dual nationality, like this man, should have their British nationality removed, and they should all be deported as well. The time for words is over, condemning anti-Semitism and so on. It's not enough to do that with words. We need to back it with action. Scumbags like this need to be kicked out.
And I think most people would echo that, but it does rather beg the question, Chris, as to why your party gave this man citizenship only 4 years ago.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how that happened. I don't know if ministers saw the decision or whether it was taken behind closed doors by officials. I understand the ECHR, according to the Telegraph, is somehow involved as well. And if that's true, that is yet another reason to come out of the ECHR. But I'm clear this man should not have been given citizenship, but I can only speak in my current role as Shadow Home Secretary, and my view is he should be stripped of that citizenship and kicked out of the country immediately.
Are we expecting the Conservatives to keep the pressure up on Keir Starmer on this? Obviously, there's a bit of a festive recess going on at the moment. PMQs is back a week on Wednesday. Is this going to be something that you're going to keep up on the government?
Yes, it is something we're going to keep going on. I will be putting Shabana Mahmood under pressure. In fact, I think I've got questions, Home Office questions, on Monday of next week. So we'll be obviously raising this case and calling on Shabana Mahmood now to get into the Home Office, round the corner from where I'm now sitting, at number 2 Marsham Street. She should get in there right now and sign the documentation to strip this man of citizenship and kick him out. Shabana Mahmood should be doing that today.
Can that be done? Can that be done at speed, Chris? If it needs to be, is there a kind of an abridged way of getting that done? Because we know, we often talk about Donald Trump, and I've mentioned it a few times this morning. If this was in America, he'd be saying this guy will be gone by 6 o'clock. We seem to have a very go-slow approach to these things.
Yeah, my view is that where there is a will, there is a way. The Home Secretary has the power under the 1971 Immigration Act to strip people of their dual nationality, the British bit of their dual nationality, if they are, and the test is, quotes, not conducive to the public good. This man, in my view, clearly is not conducive to the public good, and she could make that decision today. This is an example of where we should be acting quickly.
But of course, we all know that the lawyers will be sharpening their pencils on this one, ready to employ the Human Rights Act and say, well, he can't possibly go to Egypt. That's exactly where he's just come from, with horrendous consequences while he was there. And that, of course, then protracts the process, which means we consider him 5 years' time and the bloke's still living it up in the UK.
Well, look, I mean, 2 points. Firstly, he has been pardoned in Egypt, so I don't accept there is a danger to him in Egypt. He has just been pardoned and released, firstly. Secondly, you are right. It is likely that human rights lawyers would try and use the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, and the Domestic Human Rights Act to stop him being deported. They do this like every day of the week with illegal immigrants, foreign criminals. These lawyers abuse the ECHR to let these people, illegal immigrants, foreign criminals, and scumbags like this man, stay in the country when common sense and our own domestic law says they should be kicked out. And that is precisely why we Conservatives would pull out of the ECHR. We tried to work within it for years. It hasn't worked. The public, I'm sick of foreign criminals and illegal immigrants being allowed to stay here. I'm sick of it. I think the public are sick of it too. The ECHR is primarily responsible for that, and that's why we've got to get out of it.
A final word, if you would, Chris Philp, related to all things impenetrable in the current system. Nigel Farage is pledging to cancel gold-plated pensions of civil servants who are deemed to be responsible for allowing sex offender migrants into this country. Again, I guess the ECHR will form part of his argument. Do you support what he's attempting to do there? Is it doable?
Well, I think, to be honest, going after civil servants is not going to fix the problem. The problem we've got a plan. It's called the Borders Plan to stop illegal immigration, and it involves coming out of the ECHR, getting rid of all these modern slavery laws that let foreign criminals stay in the country, and that would enable us to deport within a week everybody who arrives here illegally, and that would mean pretty quickly they would stop trying to come here in the first place. So I think talking about messing around with civil servants' pensions is a bit of a gimmick or a soundbite. It's not going to fix the problem. The way we're going to fix the problem is by coming out the ECHR and deporting every single foreign criminal and every single illegal immigrant within a week of their feet touching dry land. That'll fix the problem, not tinkering with civil servants' pensions.
Chris Philp, thank you for your time, sir. Happy New Year. Chris Philp MP, Shadow Home Secretary. Your thoughts on what he had to say there. 0344 499 1000. Many of you, I can hear you shouting at your radios and saying, hang on a sec, they were in government when all this was happening. Mr Philp's argument, along with Kemi Badenoch, is that, look, this stuff isn't things we were involved with. We're a new Tory party. We have a very different approach to things. We're going to make it happen. They are, of course, chasing the tail of Reform UK, who are essentially setting the agenda. No matter whether you like Reform or don't intend to vote with them or not, there's no doubt about it. The Tories are chasing that vote. I think for many people it's a little bit too late, but you might give them the benefit of the doubt and go, well, OK, they've got some experience there. Yeah, if they're really going to do all this stuff, maybe we will have a country that's fit for the 21st century rather than, as some people see it, the hellhole we are currently in. We are asking the question, should Abdul Fattah be deported back to Egypt? I think you're familiar with the story. If you're not, we'll go over it a little more later. Here's a word on that very issue from Wayne in Birmingham.
Has Keir Starmer got a Christmas pudding for a brain, letting this evil man back into our country? We've got enough evil people. We hate bringing others back. What must his wife feel? Surely she must hate him like the rest of the country. I mean, she's a Jew. Is he nuts? Have a good week, mate. Take care. Happy New Year, by the way, guys.
See, it's that kind of festive cheer I like to hear. Wayne, that was brilliant. Has he got a Christmas pudding for a brain? Do you change that to an Easter egg come April? Maybe you do. I love it. Wayne, thank you very much indeed for that. There's no way Starmer could have not known that at least the overarching nature of what this man had been saying on social media. There is another argument here as well, which I love to explore this one, because I genuinely don't quite know where we're meant to go with this. It's a sort of classic example where we sort of hear something, we scratch our head, we sit up, and we ask ourselves, where do we go with this one? Because previously, when people have written terrible stuff on social media, we've kind of said, well, is it sort of hurty words? And therefore, it's social media. It's not the real world. It's social media. The thing of it not being the real world no longer really sticks. You can't it's intrinsically linked. It's a parallel existence, if you like. You can't ignore it. It might be full of tripe and hyperbole, the playground of the mischief and all that business. But we are all a little bit hypocritical here. Because there may be many people who go, well, actually, this guy, yeah, he's a nut job. But it's just his views. Let him have his views and leave it at that. Or has he crossed a line on this? Cliff in Kidderminster says, if the release of El Fattah was a top priority of Starmer's government, no wonder they're getting everything else wrong. They want to blame everything on the previous government, and yet in this case, they did not check the facts about priorities. Why does Starmer's government seem to hate the British people so much? Cliff, thank you very much indeed for that. Just gone 8:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It is Talk. Loads to get through here. Chris says, morning him, 14 years and they did nothing, talking about the Tories, and now saying everything they should have done, but did nothing. They, the Tories, like Labour, are finished. They've got a mountain to climb. Kemi Badenoch's star is kind of slightly rising. I think that's objectively true. But the distance she's got to go to really turn a corner is massive. And the one thing she has mostly on her side is time. But can she do it? Badenoch versus Farage? Who would get your vote on that? Now let's move to this story. Research say that schools are cutting teachers while being forced to spend taxpayers' money on costly solar panels, with critics accusing Labour of pouring funds into a net zero money pit instead of prioritising pupils. Let's speak to Andrew Montfort, Director of Net Zero Watch. Nice to have you with us, Andrew.
Good morning.
It's one of those stories you always don't have to double check this, because I have no difficulty in imagining an education authority talking about spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on solar panels, despite what the rest of the budget is doing, where it's leaking all over the place. People are wedded to, it's a religion, isn't it? We know this much, and they can't move from it for some reason. It's like the kind of Romero zombie that's been hardwired to believe our only future is in panels and windmills, etc. But when it's happening at the expense of kids' education, we have a real problem on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think the religious aspect of climate catastrophism and net zero is important, but I think it's also about the influence that Ed Miliband has across the Labour government. He is an extremely influential figure. He's very popular amongst the parliamentary party, and he has, it seems, been able to sort of push the net zero agenda right across government. So, I mean, it's not just the education department that's wasting money on net zero stuff. It's right across government. There are billions and billions of pounds being spewed away on sort of half-baked, inefficient madness like solar panels. I mean, it's the Ministry of Defence is installing solar panels as well. It's everywhere, and it's not going to stop until Keir Starmer realises that Ed Miliband is a liability, that actually he is trashing the country completely and utterly, and has to be stopped. He's doing so much damage, it's not true.
I mean, Miliband is on a mission, and it sounds, Andrew, that he's sort of been given a bit of a free rein on this. You get the impression that Miliband's department is kind of autonomous from the rest of government. He's got clearly a whacking budget there, and he's off. There's no stopping this fella. He's dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. He is absolutely dangerous. I don't think people realise just how bad things are looking for the next 10 years. If Ed Miliband gets his way over sort of building more wind and solar farms, for the country. I mean, we're looking at high electricity prices for decades, literally decades, into the 2050s and 2060s, and the fact that we're even contemplating allowing him to do this is just extraordinary. It will destroy manufacturing industry completely. I find the fact that the unions haven't tried to throw Miliband out to sort of disassociate themselves from Labour completely utterly extraordinary. I mean, the whole of manufacturing will go before the next election. There's no doubt about it.
Let's move on to from solar panels, the other one, windmills, and we've got a horrendous figure in that department as well, Andrew, turning them off. The cost of paying wind farms to switch off and gas plants to replace them, this is when the electricity network can't cope, has hit a record high. I think we're talking about £1.5 billion to turn something off.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extraordinary system. It's utterly mad. You would think that in a sensible world, what you would do is say, look, your new wind farm can't connect to the grid until the grid is ready to take the power it produces. And in fact, that's the system we used to have until about 2009, when somebody called Ed Miliband, who was the energy secretary back then, decided it would be better if we just let them connect to the grid, and the grid would just pay them off at times when the grid couldn't take the power they produced. It's an utterly mad system, and Ed Miliband is the man to blame for this. So again, it's his obsession, his utter insanity that is costing us so much money, and the cost is going to go through the roof. I mean, the grid, National Grid, the energy system operator, has said that the cost could conceivably rise to £8 billion a year by the time Ed Miliband's Clean Power 2030 plan is complete. That's £200 per household per year just to switch wind farms off. I mean, what a mad, mad world.
What is the alternative? What in an ideal world, Andrew, how would you be energising our country going forward?
Okay, we are in a very, very bad place. Essentially, wind and solar has been a catastrophic mistake. The costs of the system are very, very high, and they are about to explode. They're going to go really, really high. So we're looking at 30-40% price rises over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, what you would do in an ideal world is shut all those wind and solar farms down and get back to the kind of system we had in the early 2000s, when electricity was less than 15 pence a kilowatt hour. But the problem is we have essentially given cast iron contracts to all the wind and solar farms that says you get subsidies, and if the law changes in any way that hurts you, you get compensation. There is essentially it's very hard to see a way out of this. So essentially, you're getting into kind of banana republic kind of measures of saying essentially we will renege on the contracts and tough. which is not what you want to happen in a first world country. But the alternative is super high electricity prices into the 2050s and 2060s.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You think back when, you know, where there were debates about nuclear being a prime source of energy. We've got a lot of that in this country, mostly owned by the French, as I understand it. So they're doing rather well out of it, not us. But you know, in the Cameron era of government, when and even before that, when people said, well, we can't really go nuclear because, you know, it's going to take 15, 20 years to get these things up and running. They would be up and running by now if somebody had had the foresight.
Yeah, I mean, nuclear, I think, would have been a much better way to go on this. I mean, yeah, the cheapest way to run the grid would have been to just stick with it with the gas. Yeah. Fired grid. Nuclear is more expensive, but it is zero carbon, so that would be great. But as it is, you know, it's very unlikely that anybody will build nuclear here anyway, because it's just going to drive the cost of the system up even higher. Yeah. We are in a really bad place, and you know, we have to point the finger at all those politicians over the last 20 years who have got us into this terrible, terrible place.
Yeah, and it's a long old list of politicians, let's be honest. Andrew, thank you for your time. Always enjoy speaking. Andrew Montford, he's director of Net Zero Watch. Thank you to him. Back to you with more comment. Damon in Wigan says, I'm absolutely raging this morning because of this government. What they said was a top priority to this dangerous man being allowed back into Britain. This guy hates Britain, by the way. He's never said he's not really British, and he's not. And I wonder why I served in the British Army back in the 1990s, when our governments, past and present, are just letting any dangerous character into Britain. Something is coming, and the British people will bear the brunt of it. Thanks, Ian. No, thank you, Damon. And I absolutely share that horrendous decision by this government, which seems to have happened with either little or no knowledge of Abdel Fattah's past, which was there for all to see. They can't have not known about the kind of things this man believed. He was an extremist, a racist, an anti-Semite, a man advocating the killing of Jews, and goodness knows who else. I mean, the list goes on. And Downing Street apparently didn't know this? I'm struggling with that. I'm really struggling to believe that that is the case. Let's go to Danny down in London. Danny, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Just saying about this chat. England is just like a dustbin. Anyone that's got any rubbish, they throw it in a dustbin, and England takes it all. We take everyone, all these people coming in on boats. And this chap here, this is the icing on the cake. As you said, I've been listening to your programme, the government must have known about it. And when he made that speech 2 years ago, he actually admitted about that, how can you jail someone for tweets? What about Lucy Connolly?
Well, I mean, it's not just her. I mean, there he was, literally in opposition, saying, you know, he's gone to jail for things he's put on Twitter. He's disparaging and correctly talking about how weird that is, and yet under his administration, I know it happened under the last lot as well, people go to jail in this country for things they said on Twitter.
But how can Starmer get out of this? Explain to me. How can he get out of this?
I have no idea. Do you know what's bothering me more than anything, Danny, is he's still got that original tweet welcoming the man home on the Downing Street Twitter feed. It's still there.
Basically, he's putting two fingers up to everyone, isn't it? That's his way of... That's my opinion, anyway.
I think you might be right. Danny, thank you very much indeed for that. And it's worth also reminding you, I mean, if you want to know the kind of half-wits that live among us, and there's loads of them out there, then the Jeremy Corbyn Zara Sultana party, who call themselves your party, this is what they tweeted after this dangerous man was welcomed back to the UK. Nigel Farage, of course, was one of the leading voices saying, you know, this is an outrage. So Corbyn's party says this is the man that Farage and Britain's leading racists want deported. They say Allah was a leader of the struggle against tyranny in Egypt. He risked his life for freedom and democracy, jailed by Egypt's military dictatorship. The bigots attacking him have no idea what that means. What would you have to show Jeremy Corbyn? If Jeremy Corbyn came round your house and you went, here, Jez, have a sit down, mate. I'll make you a nice cup of tea and maybe an iced fancy, a red one. and we'll sit down and we'll have a chat. I want to show you these tweets. These are tweets from the man that you are defending. He says things like advocating of killing all Zionists, including civilians. He talks about colonialists. If you kill a colonialist, you're a hero. He calls himself a racist. He says he doesn't like white people. He doesn't like the police. He doesn't like the English or the Dutch. What would Corbyn's answer to that? If Jezza was sitting there right opposite you, you're on the sofa, he's in the armchair, having his cup of tea, and you say, Jeremy, how do you respond to this? Because this is the kind of language that you've spent a lifetime arguing against. Bigotry and racism and fascism and all those hereditary... You've made a living out of arguing against people who say racist things. What's your answer, Jezza? You got 5 seconds, go, and then set your little stopwatch. I mean, really? Would he have an answer to that? I'm absolutely banjaxed as to where he would go with this. And Keir Starmer, frankly, all the while that tweet remains welcoming this man home, is no better than Jeremy Corbyn. A top priority for my government to get this man back to the UK. A man who has views and beliefs that are not compatible, well, not just not compatible with this country, not compatible with the 21st century, frankly. And we give this kind of filth an absolute free pass every day of the week. As many of you have picked up on social media, this is not new. This is a very high-profile case for obvious reasons. But actually, if you scroll through social media, you'll see loads of people with these kind of views. Loads of people. They're out there all over the place. They're in plain sight. We saw half of them on those anti-Israel protests that took place almost on a weekly basis, that took place even after the synagogue attacks in Manchester on the same evening. It was allowed to happen in this country. It's Britain. In this country, we allowed that to happen. The police said, oh, we'd rather you didn't protest today. We'd rather you did. What, seriously? People have just lost their lives at a synagogue in the name of an anti-Semitic racist attack. And you are asking nicely to another anti-Israeli mob, people who think Hamas are like having the Partridge Family round your house for a cup of tea. I mean, seriously? And we're asking them nicely? This is the bonkers world we're living. And then the main parties, the Labour Party, the Tory Party, scratching their head going, well, why are Reform doing so well in the... But they're doing well because they're speaking a very different language from the mainstream party. They're not perfect. Reform aren't perfect. They've got loads of areas they've still got to iron out. They know that more than anyone else. But in the absence of any logic from the two main parties, and on this particular guy, this Abdel Fattah, remember, the last government, including people like Liz Truss, were also asking for this man to come back to the UK. It was the Tories that gave him citizenship. So yes, there is a reason why Reform are doing better, because they're speaking a language I think that most people tend to understand. Word from Gerald, who says, as a lawyer, I'm trying to derive a principle from the circumstances of this Egyptian's welcome to the UK. It would seem to be this, that it's perfectly acceptable to announce that you want to kill all Zionists, gays, Americans, etc., to be killed. But if you add the words, for all I care, that is a criminal offence. Yeah, maybe that's what he should have done, is written for all I care. Or no, because he didn't add for all I care. Where do we stand on that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It is indeed Talk. Lots to get through here. More of your comments on the way as well. You can voice note us 0344 499 1000, or of course you can message 87222. The time now 8 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's get a sports roundup.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from the Sun.
We'll try and do it in 90 seconds. Martin Lipton, chief sports reporter at The Sun, is with us afternoon, or morning to you rather, Martin. Let's start with, we're not going to start with football, we're not even going to start with cricket. Let's start with darts. Luke Littler, what his family bought him for Christmas? Goodness me, what can you buy a newfound millionaire?
That's a good question. I mean, to be fair, there's nothing that you can't have if you're Luke Littler at the moment, I suspect. What he does wish and want desperately is to be world champion once again.
Yeah.
He there's £1 million on the line for him on Saturday night if he wins. He's into the last 8 tonight, and at the moment it looks as though there's nothing can stop him, is there? He seems to be a force of darts nature, really. I have to say it's remarkable how consistent he is, and also at such a young age, he's still barely a kid. He just got his first car and things that the rites of passage that seem to have, and most of us go through. He's doing through in the massive spotlight, which I think is quite impressive. And his form has definitely not been hit at all by any of this highlighting of his life.
And of course, it's reinvigorated darts. I know darts had already been going through this kind of almost rediscovery. It's been given the usual kind of sort of Hearn-esque panache and the lights and the music and the glamour that goes with big events these days, boxing being an obvious one. They've not quite got to snooker in that respect yet, but maybe they should leave that untouched. But certainly darts.
Can you imagine snooker with
wouldn't it be something? Yeah.
Oh, he got a black light and everything. Be fantastic.
Yeah. Before we kick off with the first frame, here's Jay-Z on top of the table.
I think you've sold it. I think you should get on the phone to the Hearns and say, "Come on, we've got this one."
Well, they're often, as you know, in the building, so you always know when one of them's in because of that great big bloody car outside. So I might just grab one of them and suggest it. Let's move to football. Ronaldo, of course. Ronaldo is the man that just keeps on going. We thought, he's legged it out of mainstream football. Can we call it that? But apparently looking at a transfer back to Europe. He wants...
He's desperate to get to 1,000 goals.
Of course.
And he still feels he can prove himself that even at nearly 41 now, he's still good enough to play for a major team in a major league.
Yeah.
Whether that be back in Portugal, of course, where he started all those years ago at Sporting Lisbon. He hasn't played in Germany yet, so there's an option for him possibly. He's played everywhere else, obviously in England and Spain and Italy. Yeah. He hasn't played in France, so those are the two big 5 leagues he's not been to. But he remains a remarkable character. I mean, his fitness regime is beyond most mortals. And he's still doing it at and he's still scoring goals, albeit you say, well, he's only scoring goals in Saudi Arabia. He is, but he also scores all those goals for Portugal.
True.
He'll be, there at the World Cup, with FIFA having wiped the ban he should have received for the red card against Ireland. It may not have worked his second time at Manchester United, but that was as much about Manchester United, I suspect, as it was about Cristiano Ronaldo. And he still has something in him, a drive and determination that few possess. And you also feel that as long as Messi's still playing, he wants to go for at least one game longer.
Yeah, of course he does. Can you see him playing alongside Harry Kane in Germany, that kind of setup?
Well, I mean, the trouble with that is that they're both alpha males, and you can't really have 2 alpha males playing centre forward.
That might be carnage.
Well, I think there'd be a clash of commitment, shall we say, between the two of them.
Indeed. Talking of alpha males, my team Chelsea, former hero, of course, over there at the Bridge, John Terry. I'd like to think he's not skint, but he's certainly going to sell up a few bits of memorabilia.
Yeah, including the shirt he wore for the 2008 Champions League final. Was it apparently going to get 120,000 for it? Now, you would have thought he'd have thrown the thing away, as it was probably the reminder of this lowest moment on the pitch when he slipped, taking the penalty, which would have won that. At the time would have been a first Champions League for Chelsea in 2008 in Moscow in a horrendous downpour. It was a vile day, and it didn't stop raining from about 9 in the morning until 10 the next morning. It was truly horrible.
Indeed. Well, that particular top, of course, is full of John Terry's tears, isn't it? So, you know, if you took it to a lab, you'd actually have his tear-based DNA as well as his sweat and as well as the rain as well. So maybe
I think
got
one
extra...
for a Chelsea fan or someone who really doesn't like Chelsea.
Yeah.
Well, in between.
Exactly.
Other stuff as well. I mean, a lot of footballers do it. They feel that, you know, for them after a while, the mementos become trinkets. And they don't need them anymore because the real memories are the ones that are inside their head and they'll never go.
I was talking to a former footballer not that long ago, and he said it's a very weird world that you live in when any day of the week you could just pick a shirt that you wore last week and sell it for 10 grand. You know, you could do that. Your boots that you played and scored a goal in at the beginning of the season, you could sell for 5 grand. You know, it's that kind of weird world, isn't it? You've got a never-ending supply of your own memorabilia.
Absolutely. I mean, and some people just hoard it, others don't want it. It is really interesting. Others think of the long term, and that could be worth a few bob in a few years. I might as well just stick it in the cupboard.
Yeah. And a final one, I mentioned supporting Chelsea. Shocking weekend for Chelsea. They're back in 5th, I think, again, being given a kicking by Villa. But, of course, it's Arsenal that are still, I mean, they're 2 points clear. City are still there to do some damage. But despite Arsenal's big run, and they are playing some incredible football, Martin, I think we can all agree on that. But certainly as a business, they've got their own troubles.
Well, they could do it at the centre forward. Gyökeres has come in and not scored enough goals.
Yeah.
So Mourinho has been filling in the void. Again, he had a run recently where he hasn't scored, and he was scoring a few earlier. They are looking at goals. 4 of their last 6 goals have been own goals. It's one of the reasons that they're looking...
Including Wolves, as I remember.
Yeah, Wolves scored 2 own goals.
That's right, yes, they did.
But Brighton got 1. And now that part of that is because you're putting them under pressure and making defenders make mistakes in front of their own goal.
Yep.
But that's where you want your centre forward. Eventually, you assume the own goals are going to stop. And if you're not scoring goals, then it makes it much harder because, you know, Manchester City, conversely, their centre forward didn't score on Saturday. I was at Nottingham Forest.
Yep.
But Holland has scored 19 goals in 18 league games this season.
Yeah.
They know more often than not he is going to score. They're effectively 1-0 up when they walk on the pitch.
Yeah, every time. Listen, on that point, Martin, we have to cut in. We're up. Martin Lipton, thank you. Chief Sports Reporter at The Sun with us here on Talk. Right now, 9 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there. I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. this was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy.
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. It is the home of Common Sense with Ian Collins for the next hour or so right here on Talk. You've got me for 4 days this week, and then we're kind of back to normality from next Monday. It's called a Christmas schedule, kids. So different voices, different times, and all the rest of it. You get the drift. Same every year. Lots to get through in this section. We are, of course, responding to Keir Starmer and his extraordinary decision to welcome with open arms back into the United Kingdom Abdel Fattah. This is the Islamist extremist who's called for Zionists to be killed. Doesn't like white people. Doesn't like the police. Doesn't like the English. He was given citizenship by this country, rather curiously, but he's back. Many now calling for him to be deported. Would you echo that sentiment? 0344 499 1000. Also this afternoon, I keep doing it. Also this morning, more than 7 million NHS patients faced waiting lists for 4 weeks or more between September and November, making it the worst autumn since records began in 2019. We'll talk more and get your comments on Donald Trump, who reckons the peace deal between Ukraine and Russia is 95% done. Are we really nudging towards an everlasting peace in that region? Details to come. 0344 499 1000. And a quick word from Simon in Durham. He says, I don't believe Ed Miliband is acting autonomously from the rest of the government. I alluded to the fact that he seems to have almost a free rein with a big old budget just to build as many windmills and solar farms as he possibly can. Simon concludes they're all in it together. Is it their aim to decimate our once great nation? I know it sounds and feels beyond insane, but what is one to think? It is when you see politicians doing, for want of a better phrase, weird stuff, you are sort of forced to scratch. Why there is another way of. It's a bit cheaper and it's not a burden on the taxpayer and it's more efficient. And certainly Miliband is under the spotlight, but he just keeps on going. He's like this sort of bull raging his way through the net zero agenda. And if he sees a space or a bush, he'll whack a windmill there or stick a panel on a roof, whether it's a school, anywhere you like. I don't know whether he's counting his success in panels. I sense maybe he is. That's perhaps his litmus test for success. Who knows? Lots to talk about, and particularly that curious story of Keir Starmer, who's welcomed the British Egyptian activist back to the UK. Let's get a word on this and a couple of other stories as well. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Head of Communications for Popular Conservatism and former MEP, back with us. Good morning to you and Happy New Year.
Good morning, Happy New Year, and of course it's still the Christmas period, so Happy Christmas too.
Indeed, yeah, I'm glad you said that it's still the Christmas period, because I quite like the fact that it's still the Christmas period, and yet you look around in this curious world of retail and go, I actually had to go into a supermarket and there was no memory of Christmas, it had just disappeared.
No, I still quite like having, some mince pies and those sorts of things until it's the end of Christmas, and they've all gone.
Well, I think Christmas should go on to about April, to be honest. I think I just love the sense and the feel of it. There's something very cosy and nice and warm about it.
Well, my children asked for it to happen every 2 weeks, so I think they'd agree with you.
Yeah, I think they would. Mine too. Let's talk about Keir Starmer then. This extraordinary story, you couldn't have made this up a week ago, where our Prime Minister has put out a tweet, essentially, or a post on X, talking about how delighted he is, and that was the word he used, that this rather extremist character, Abdel Fattah, has come back to the UK. He says he's reunited with his loved ones. He must be feeling profound relief. He wants to pay tribute to the man's family. And he says the case was a top priority for my government since we came to office. A top priority since we came to government. Had he not seen these previous things that this man, in their thousands, have been tweeting over the years, or had he seen them and ignored them? What's going on here?
At this point, I don't think it matters if it's ignorance or willfulness, that it is so clearly the wrong decision, as so often true of this government, that whether they knew they were doing the wrong thing or they did it by mistake is rather irrelevant. They keep getting things desperately wrong. Welcoming this man who has called for the police to be killed, for Jews to be killed, for all colonialists to be killed, is not acceptable. And of course, as is so often true, this goes back to Tony Blair, the Supreme Court, and the ECHR.
Yeah. And that's always going to be this kind of immovable object, isn't it, in these kind of cases? And we've now got the Conservatives saying, this man, I think it's the front page of the Mail, Kemi Badenoch, saying, I don't want people who hate our country coming here. I think that's a completely reasonable point to raise. But you sort of know this story will just go away. Nothing is likely to happen. I don't imagine Starmer standing on the steps of Number 10 saying, I got it horribly wrong. I realise what this man is all about. He's back to Egypt a week on Tuesday. I can't see it happening.
No, and he's a lawyer, and he desperately believes in our judiciary. And it is our judiciary that's led us here, that it has, in the previous case, there was a murderer who was convicted in America and served his time. And after his release, he tried to claim he was British just because his mother had been, although he'd never lived here, he'd not been born here, it was just through his mother. And he was then convicted again of a minor infraction in 2013, and we tried to deport him. And so he tried to claim, you can't deport me, I'm British. And he won at judicial review, the Supreme Court, because they incited the ECHR. Yeah. And the ECHR said he had a right to a family life, even though his family was not here. And that meant that the government is hamstrung. The Tory government didn't want this man in particularly at all, but they were told by the judge, by the lawyers, by the government lawyers, no doubt by their civil servants, that they had no choice but to admit this man, because otherwise the ECHR would haul us over the coals. Now, I think that is absolutely supine of the Conservative government. They should have had the backbone to say, the ECHR is wrong. We cannot kowtow to foreign powers, foreign judges, when it is absolutely clearly against the British interest. Yeah. That the job of this government is to put the British people first. I'm afraid the Tories failed because of the rules Blair brought in, and the Labour government is putting the icing on the cake to make sure we never get our own democratic will.
But it's almost worse than that, because the Conservatives also gave him citizenship, which is.
But that's why they were told by the ECHR they had to. That was the ECHR ruling on David Fenton Bangs, the American murderer. The system is completely broken. The only way we can sort this out is to repeal hundreds of bad bits of legislation. We need to get rid of the quangos that give this advice. We need to take back the power from the very, very political judges. And we really need a government that will stand up for the British interests and not just listen to a few celebrities who don't know what they're on about.
And on a related issue, channel migration, which is another area where cases invariably end up subject to ECHR rulings and goodness knows what else. But of course, it's not just that. There's also a little issue of the pesky French themselves who stand in the way. And in this case, it gets even worse. Not just the French, but French unions, the police union themselves, are blocking new interception techniques because there's a concern for the workers' health and safety, which I find an extraordinary argument coming from the police.
We all know about French unions. It's in the headlines at least once a year that the airspace over France is not working because their air traffic control is on strike. Their farmers have a great time taking to the streets of Paris, which in our current circumstances in the UK, I think is highly understandable, and perhaps we need a bit more of it. But they are a very, very unionised country and work to rule and strike frequently. Why wouldn't they? The British have paid hundreds of millions of pounds to the French to prevent people crossing the Channel, and they seem to have enjoyed the money and given nothing in return. There is no government will from the French to stop the boats, and the police are merely taking advantage of that.
I mean, it's extraordinary that their arguments are that it's rather dangerous to sort of paddle into shallow water to try and stop this. I mean, it's the police we're talking about, not, you know, the local Calais choir that we're requiring to go in there and try and stop migrants. These are the police who are meant to stop a criminal offence occurring, but the unions have decided that messing around with dinghies and trying to divert them is way too dangerous for their members.
But we've got to be honest, these are, after all, the French police. And I believe one used to be able to Google famous French victories, to which Google told you there were none.
That's right, yes.
They're not known for their willingness to take on such things. And they are unionised and they want to protect their own best interests. And their best interests do not align with the British best interests to stop these unknown, potentially dangerous, criminal, all criminal because they are breaking into our country illegally, people from getting here.
It's just rather extraordinary if you join the French police force and think, you know, what's my job? Well, Marcel, not much, frankly, because if you come across anything that looks a little bit iffy, you won't have to do it because, you know, we'll protect you. I mean, what's the point?
Oh, well, I'm sure you've watched over the years Allo Allo.
Of course. I loved Allo Allo.
It does remind one of the wonderful gendarme in that, who would not be terribly effective if he were presented with someone trying to cross the Channel.
Spot on. Final story, Annunziata. Nigel Farage vowing to strip pensions from civil servants who enable dangerous foreign offenders entering Britain. I'm not sure how doable this is because, you know, whatever we think of certain civil servants, as a previous guest told us, you couldn't really retro-introduce something without going through all sorts of laws and hurdles.
I think this is an example of doing the complicated thing where the simple thing would be far more sensible. And surely the sensible thing to do is, if people admit criminals, fire them.
Yeah.
That ends the problem.
Yes.
It's a huge disincentive to doing the wrong thing if you're going to lose your job and therefore stop adding to your gold-plated pension. But the idea you can just strip a pension retrospectively, I think, is actually a really bad precedent to set. That we know of terrible cases. Humphreys at the BBC, where he still got his incredible pension despite his conviction. But I don't think you can undo things that have already been earned retrospectively. I think what you can do, and absolutely should do, is fire people. And in the civil service, it is very, very difficult to fire people. And we know this from other parts of the public sector, that teachers can fail and fail, but they won't be fired. That we hear of doctors who do horrific things and yet they don't have their licenses revoked. I think we have to have a much more cutthroat and in the public interest approach to hiring and firing.
Completely reasonable stuff to finish on. Annunziata, thank you for your time as ever. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Head of Communications for Popular Conservatism and former MEP. I think the name she was looking for was Edwards. Edwards was who she was referring to at the BBC. More from you. Jane says, great to see you. Morning, Ian. Deport Fatah, send Starmer along with the rest of Labour nutters, shove them on a desert island to swim with the sharks. He makes a mockery of everything our soldiers fought for. We remember the 100-year-old former soldier saying on Remembrance Week that was asked, was it all worth it? And he said, no, it wasn't. You know, you look at the world around you, it really wasn't worth it. This from Bob, who says the British people demand that there's a person who deserves to be deported. Its name is Two-Tier, says Bob. And there'd be a few Tories, I think, would have to go on that list as well if you're consistent with this particular story. Let's get a voice note on this issue. It comes from Jenny.
There is no way that these politicians didn't know this man's tweets or background. They must have put some Joey in charge and told them to go through social media posts and look at what this geezer has done. And at the end of the day, if somebody's telling you that they're a bad person, then we really do need to sort him.
Yeah, I like the resigned laugh at the end, Jenny. Thank you very much indeed for that. It's worth having a reminder here, by the way, Keir Starmer, on this man, Abdel Fattah, that has been welcomed back with open arms. Here's Keir Starmer talking about the case back in 2022. So Starmer was leader of the opposition at the time. Have a listen.
And can I start by raising the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah? Yeah. As the Prime Minister knows and has said, he's a British citizen, jailed for the crime of posting on social media and been imprisoned in Egypt for most of the last 9 years.
So he did know that the man had posted stuff on social media. Now, the argument the government would probably make is, oh yeah, but we weren't talking about those posts. We're talking about other stuff. Well, if this case centres around stuff he'd written on social media, you might imagine that a very well-paid advisor at Number 10, or even somewhere within the Foreign Office, the Home Office, wherever, would have gone through fine-tooth comb fashion of the kind of stuff this man had written, calling for the death of Jews and white people and the police and the Dutch and the English, and horrendous racism and anti-Semitism. Self-declared racist as well, I should add, in one of his comments. There's no way they could not have known that. So the idea that you would have this as a... There he was in opposition, but today or yesterday, he said on a post on social media. So remember, he knows what this man had written on social media, and Keir Starmer posted that it's great to have him back in the country. Great to have him back. Man alive. I'd hate to think what a wrong 'un looks like to Keir Starmer. Great to have him back, and it was one of my top priorities. At what point would you make it a top priority to welcome back a man who publicly calls for the killing of Jews, white people, police, and God knows who else? At what point? And that post from our Prime Minister is still there on his Twitter feed. We'll have another check in a minute, see if it's disappeared since we've been on air. But as of coming on air, that post was still there. And I'm just being told it is still there. I mean, what in the name of? It's still there. This is our Prime Minister. This is our Prime Minister. This is a man, by the way, who previously had all sorts of animated things to say about stuff people had written on social media. In fact, under his watch, people had gone to jail for things they'd written on social media. I mean, not very nice stuff, I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I would say not quite up there with this fella. Seriously. 0344 499 1000. We'll take your calls. You can voice note us on that number as well. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. 24 minutes after 9 o'clock. It is the home of common sense. Ian Collins on breakfast. Jeremy Kyle kicks off the brand new breakfast show a week today. Stand by for all of that. Fireworks and God knows what else. Looking forward to that right here on Talk. Now, this story. The Trump administration has announced sanctions against 5 Europeans for crimes against freedom of speech. Sarah Rogers, who's the Under-Secretary of State for Public Policy, spoke about free speech in Europe earlier this month. It was in reference to one member of the European Parliament who tweeted a message to Piggyland. There is no censorship in Europe and everybody has to follow our rules. Trump fights for the free press, suing newspapers and TV stations, so leave us alone. Let's have a listen to her response.
These are ordinary Europeans and one Brit who were punished by their governments for saying what they thought was true or just what they felt like saying. In a free society, that shouldn't happen. So which is it, Mr. Braunstetter? Is there no censorship in Europe, or do we all have to follow your rules?
Do we all have to follow your rules? Let's get a word from Sam Armstrong, political consultant with the Free Speech Union. Morning, Sam. Always good to see you. It's kind of interesting. Is there a contradiction? Is there hypocrisy going on here? I mean, who's got the right to free speech? And when you're against free speech, is it your right of free speech to say you're against free speech?
Well, look, there is a problem, which is there are people in Europe, in the institutions connected with the EU in particular, that say they believe in democracy, apart from when people vote for the wrong things, that say they believe in free speech, apart from when people speak out about perhaps migration or migrant crime. And they say they're in favour of an open and tolerant society until people start to stand up and oppose the kind of policies they have. And they wish to live in this kind of technocratic, democratic, hybrid society in which the people of Europe are allowed to vote for anyone or voice anything as long as it comes from a pre-approved list. And that's no dice to our American friends, because they believe in a much more open, much more vibrant, free country and free society that I think we all thought we used to have in this country, in which, you know, you judge people on the basis of the quality of their ideas. And if they're no good, well, you trust people to come to the right conclusions.
But are the Americans therefore contradicting their own argument of free speech?
Absolutely not. And I think this is really crucial to understand. So the first thing is, what are these sanctions? These sanctions are basically saying these people don't have the right to enter the US. These are migration policies. And why wouldn't the American government want these people within America? Well, it's probably because they have spent the last few years busying themselves, flying around capitals all over the world, lobbying governments to put on anti-speech policies, laws, restrictions on social media platforms. And social media platforms are, by and large, American companies. So these are people that have flown around the world attacking American companies, attacking American corporations, demanding that they block users around the world from being able to express their own opinion. Sometimes they've demanded that they block Americans from being able to express their own opinion. So is it any wonder that the American government turns around and says, actually, do you know what, that's great for you, but we don't want you in our country doing it?
It's interesting. We've been talking a lot about free speech because of this Egyptian story this morning, this character that Keir Starmer has welcomed into the country. And it certainly caused me a little bit of a conflict, because when you're pro-free speech, is that absolute? Does it come with caveats? Threatening to kill someone, which this person does, clearly crosses a line. But for different people, that line is in different places, right?
Well, so we've always had at the Free Speech Union, broadly speaking, a couple of carve-outs. And one carve-out is, for example, membership of a political party. We think it should be open to the Conservative Party to say, if they get a bunch of communists joining, do you know what, we don't think your views are in line with us. We're a party that believes in certain things. The second is a country. As a country, we believe in certain things. We have a certain amount of values. And if you believe that all Jews should be put to death, or that it's legitimate to kill imperialists, which presumably is people in the UK, If you believe that, we're actually going to keep you outside of our country. We're not going to go and arrest you. We're not going to pick you up there and lock you up. But as a migration policy, we're not going to let you in. It seems to me that all societies should have free, robust internal discussion, but there are bad people out there in the world.
Yeah.
And in my view, every government has got the absolute and entire right to keep them out of their country.
That would sound completely reasonable. I suppose another, I mean, this is, it could go into all sorts of, possibly a conversation best had over a beer in some respects, Sam, because it could go on forever in terms of where the rules and regs are, because somebody could say, OK, yeah, that used to be my view, but it's not my view anymore. It's my right to change my view. Where does that sit within how we judge people who write nefarious things online?
Well, I think we should be more forgiving as a society, and we should be prepared to say, do you know what? Yeah, you know, you said that as a kid, or you said that when you were young, and in our modern world in which there's a record of everything forever, we've kind of lost our ability to forget. But this bloke that Starmer's found, there's no evidence that he's changed his view. No. This was pretty much the last thing he said before the Egyptian government banged him up in jail, wrongly, rightly, whatever. And Keir Starmer's gone and said, oh, he's my top priority.
Correct.
Top priority. Yeah. An Egyptian anti-Semite. Honestly, you would think that his top priority might be the fact that millions of people in this country are struggling to put food on their plates. It is getting tougher and tougher just to get by in this country. And instead of making those people, ordinary people that get up, that are listening to this radio station today, do you know why? Because they're working between Christmas and New Year, unlike the Prime Minister. You might think that they would be his top priority, not whichever, person from somewhere I've never even heard of, frankly, for a cause I've never even heard of, who the moment you do even basic due diligence on, oh, right, he turns out to be yet another extremist that the Prime Minister seems so unfortunately to stumble across.
Indeed, and we know that we played a clip a little earlier, back in 2022, when Starmer was leader of the opposition, he stood up and he asked Rishi Sunak. In fact, let's have a listen to it. It's worth listening to this because it's quite telling with the reference to social media. Have a listen to this, Sam.
And can I start by raising the case of Alaa Abdul Fattah?
Yeah.
As the Prime Minister knows and has said, he's a British citizen, jailed for the crime of posting on social media and been imprisoned in Egypt for most of the last 9 years.
So he knew that this man was a little lively on social media and yet still thought, I'll put out a tweet saying, thank goodness this man is back in the UK, where he belongs, with his family. It was my top priority to get him over here. He knew.
Yeah, but where I agree with Keir Starmer is I don't think people should be locked up for posting things on social media.
100%.
The great irony is, ever since he's taken office, Keir Starmer has gone off. He's had a sort of Damascene conversion to this point in which he wants to lock up everyone he can find for doing nothing more than posting on Twitter, posting on Facebook, posting on the rest of it. And again, why is it that it always with this man comes down to this kind of two-tier status? If you're some sympathetic case, but for lefties on social media, you've got celebrity supporters, Keir Starmer is delighted to kind of drape your virtue all over himself. If you are an ordinary, working class, slightly distasteful to our guardian overlords figure from this country, Keir Starmer wants nothing to do with you. He's going to throw the book at you. He's totally against you. This is just yet another case of two-tier approach from the Prime Minister.
Indeed, and they tried to, we played another, I won't even put you through the torture of listening to a montage of worthy celebrities who'd been calling for this man to be released, but they seem to have sort of caricatured him as a writer, an academic, and almost as if he was Salman Rushdie, essentially. I think that's where the vibe they were trying to get going, that, this poor man. This man is a racist. This man is an anti-Semite. This man has called for the killing of people, including white people. I mean, it's just, the catalogue is horrific. But as you say, the Guardianistas are absolutely fine with putting their name to defending him, including Jeremy Corbyn's party, who suggested he was essentially a man that we should be almost knighting because he's he risked his life for freedom and democracy, they said. The bigots attacking him have no idea what that means.
Yeah, well, what kind of message, I know Jeremy Corbyn doesn't care about this in the least, but what kind of message does this send to British Jews who, let's bear in mind, have just suffered a terrorist atrocity in both Sydney in Australia and in Manchester in this country, that this man who has said the most abhorrent things about how he wishes to kill the Zionists, wherever he finds them, including civilians, is now going to be living on the same streets as some of them. He's going to be going to some of the same shops, to be getting the same public transport, perhaps. That they have to live with a man who has openly called for their death. Yeah. That is the unequivocal, unescapable reality of what this Prime Minister has done. And it is no surprise to me that the government have made this glaring error and then have run away as far as possible from any TV camera, because they realise they have utterly got this completely disastrously wrong. Yeah. And it is indefensible. And the fact that the Your Party group, who I do consider personally, my opinion is that they're a bunch of anti-Semites themselves. There was institutional anti-Semitism in Labour when Jeremy Corbyn ran it. The bunch of so-called Palestine independents are, if anything, in my view, even worse. The fact that they support this tells you everything you need to know, which is this is a kind of Exocet missile targeted at Britain's Jewish community in the midst of Hanukkah. They're a precious time of year for them.
Of course, absolutely spot on. Listen, Sam, great to have you on. Thank you. Happy New Year. Sam Armstrong, political consultant with the Free Speech Union. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David says, and good morning everybody, by the way, welcome to the Home of Common Sense. David says, the phrase "nobody told me" should be carved on Starmer's gravestone. Nobody told, I did nothing about it. You can almost hear it. Didn't know about these tweets? Well, you kind of did, actually, because, you know, you've talked about tweets a lot. Do you know, the funny thing is, when Starmer was in opposition, there was an interview, I think it was just some random interview, where he was asked about freedom of speech and social media. And he was very sympathetic. He said something on the lines of, you know, I think when it comes to social media, we've really got to look at that, because it's a whole different animal. And people don't know the rules around social media. I was explaining a little earlier that there was a story on X at the weekend where a former police officer had alluded to the fact that there is a famous celebrity who's essentially a bit of a wrong-un, a bit touchy-feely in the workplace. And he didn't mention who it was, but it was on the back of the David Walliams story. So he said, there's another celebrity out there, it's only a matter of time before this person's name comes out. And of course, what it then provoked was a litany of people guessing who the perpetrator was. This happened during the Hugh Edwards thing. People would just randomly go, oh, I know who it is, and then they would mention somebody really quite well known, and it's a libel. Okay, it's a complete libel. Yeah, they're definitely dodgy, definitely, you can probably into kids and all sorts of things. How do you think, that could cost you your house if somebody sued you, potentially. And I always run with the rather misplaced belief that by now we all know the rules and the regulations. You don't libel someone. But clearly you don't. And when I saw this at the weekend, there was one woman who actually included the Twitter handle of the person she was accusing of being the sex offender. Oh, I know, I reckon it's... And then she put their name in there. I thought, what, really? Do you not know that can land you in all sorts of... I think some people see it as, look, it's social media, it's the Wild West, it's meant to be rogue, you can say whatever you like. Now, if you believe that, would you then support Abdul Fattah in his rather horrendous anti-Semitic racist tweets that he'd previously posted? I don't think any of us would we? But we've all got our own line, haven't we? And it mostly melts down to our own opinion on things, I sense. Let's look at this story, which has a much more sort of light-hearted feel to it, although not all the subject matter is light-hearted. This is the story of Google's top searches of 2025. And the top of the list was Charlie Kirk, of course, who was murdered in broad daylight in the States. That was the top search for Google in 2025 and was Wikipedia's most read article worldwide. Ozzy Osbourne ranked second. The Black Sabbath frontman died, of course, in July. Interesting who else was on the list. Let's get a word from Claire Pearsall, commentator, an all-round good egg and nice person. Claire, Happy New Year, or is it Happy Christmas, or is it both?
Well, let's go with both. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year. Good to see you.
You've got some tinsel behind you, so I'm running with the Christmas thing.
We're still there.
Let's do that. It's kind of interesting. I was actually a little bit surprised that whilst Charlie Kirk was a big story, the fact that it was, their most searched story, search name of the year, I don't know why, it did slightly surprise me. I didn't know it was just going to... I thought it would be, I don't know, maybe President Trump or something, Vladimir Putin, someone like that. But it was Charlie Kirk.
Well, that's right. And I think it was one of those stories that, for those of us who were aware of Charlie Kirk and what he did and what he said, we wouldn't necessarily go and search up his name. We would watch news reports, we would read the social media posts, but there are some people who had no idea really what he stood for. So therefore, they're going to go and find out more. And I think that that's actually quite refreshing, that people were interested enough to go and find out why this person was murdered in such a brutal manner, in such a public way, and they want to go and find out what he did, and therefore they're researching a little bit more as to what it was that he stood for. Now, whether they agreed with it or not, at least they were going to find out the information. So I think it shows the public's willingness to actually learn something. I was really surprised when it happened. I was actually at work and I got home and my son said, have you seen Charlie Kirk's died? Now, he's 17. I wouldn't have necessarily put him as the sort of person that would have known who Charlie was. Yeah. But he was interested, he knew, and then he was showing me different posts on social media that I hadn't necessarily seen. So I think that builds into it. And of course, the misinformation that's out there, it's really important to look at more than one source of information. And I think that we're all a little bit guilty sometimes of just going, oh yeah, that's what it is, and moving on. Yeah. But we do need to sort of verify that information coming over.
Indeed, and it's fair to say that Charlie Kirk wasn't actually, because these are Google searches in the UK, wasn't actually that well known in this country across the board. People who are interested in politics and those who influence politics would have known who he was, and those that followed him passionately. But I think if you went around the streets with a clipboard and showed a picture of Charlie Kirk, most people would not know who he was. So maybe that would explain why there were a lot of searches for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a name that was coming up in news reports because of what happened and the sort of very public way that it happened. And people aren't always interested. You and I, indulge in a lot of political news. So we are more than aware of the work that he undertook. So therefore, it's not going to be us necessarily searching up. But it's nice to have the sort of backup here from Google to say that people really were interested to find out who he was. They didn't just pass by and just go, oh, that I don't know who he is, so I don't care. Actually, they did care. They wanted to know and they wanted to learn. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Second on the list of most searched was Ozzy Osbourne, who sadly died this year. I think if you went round with that clipboard I just referred to, everybody's heard of Ozzy Osbourne.
But it was one of those things. It's quite funny on his, I think it's on Spotify, on the sort of bio that comes up with the page for his music. It said, if you need to search Ozzy Osbourne, then you really have no idea what you're looking for.
Yes.
Because he was such a character, and people of our age, Ian, our very sort of young age, will know the music. We've grown up listening to those kind of songs, and we think it's fantastic that it stood the test of time. Younger generations, this is a new introduction to the music of Black Sabbath, to understanding born in Burma, one of our own.
Yeah.
We like the fact that he was one of ours. He like a rock icon.
And interestingly, third on the list was Ed Gein, of course, who is a famous killer, no longer alive in the States, and he came to prominence again after Netflix in their sort of monsters. Was it a trilogy, or was there more than three? There might have been more, but it was a series of Jeffrey Dahmer was on there. And the last one was about Ed Gein. And again, I think most people wouldn't have known who he was. It was a slightly disappointing programme. I don't know if you watched it, Claire, but it didn't quite... Beautifully made, beautifully filmed, but, you know, it went all over the place. But again, third most searched.
And it's all these sort of programmes come up from time to time on Netflix. I'd never heard of him. I'd
never heard of him, no.
No, so you sort of go, oh, who is this guy? What has happened? I've not watched the Netflix series. It wasn't one of those programs that really struck me from the start. I have watched Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, but most of the time this Christmas holiday, I've been watching Stranger Things with my son. So that gives you a level of the programs that I'm currently watching.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that Netflix is one of those streaming platforms that will bring you something of people you don't know. And as you say, beautifully put together. Adolescence, which is another one on the Google list that people then went on and searched. So that is now becoming the point of reference for people. What is coming over streaming platforms? What is coming over social media? They want to know a little bit more. So mainstream media is very, very slow on the uptake, whereas Netflix and people like that can put out content really quickly that is incredibly well done.
Indeed. Fifth on the list, and it wouldn't be British if it wasn't about the weather, because you've got to get the weather. We like talking about the weather. Snow warning was the specific phrase that people search for.
And it made me so incredibly proud to be British that there was a weather-related search item on there. We love a bit of weather watching in this country.
We do.
We are we don't get very interesting weather, let's be honest. So when there's a threat of snow, that's it. We're absolutely tracing it. We're all over it. We want to know, are the trains going to run? Are we going to get out of the house? Is this going to be just a sprinkling of some pretty frost? Or are we going to get 3 foot of snow and we're going to be in our house for a week?
Indeed.
So it's a very British thing to have, and I'm really bad. I'm following so many weather channels because living out in the sticks as I do, I need to know if I'm going to be able to get out of the end of my road, to be able to get down to the horse, to be able to get to the station. Are the cats going to have enough food? Things like that. It's a very mum sort of attitude that I have. Is everybody going to be provided for if the snow comes?
That maternal thing is, you know, despite the veneer of indifference, Claire, underneath it all is a very maternal, caring person. I've always said this about you.
Can I have that on a mug, please?
New Year's Eve, I'm going to ask you this. Are you a go to bed early, can't stand it type of person, or do you go out and give it large on New Year's Eve? Are you and the old man going to tear the place up on the 31st?
No, really, we're not. We're going to be on the sofa. We're going to have a lovely dinner, a bottle of fizz, and we'll probably watch the New Year in and then go to bed. My son is out at a party, so that's what 17-year-olds do. I'm a little bit too old for that.
Yeah, don't wait up for him, by the way, because he won't come home till about 7 or 8. So
precisely,
you know that already. Claire, great to have you on. Thank you, Claire Pearsall, commentator and friend of the show. The rest of that list, by the way, number 6 was India versus England. Obviously talking about cricket. Number 7, Ricky Hatton, boxing hero, who we lost this year too. Diogo Jota, famous footballer, of course, sadly died this year. Club World Cup was the 9th most popular search. A reminder, Chelsea are the Club World Cup holders. And number 10, Iran. Just randomly, Iran. I wonder if that was in reference to something. Iran is never really out of the news. I don't imagine most people were sitting on your sofa, I don't know, watching the Ed Gein thing on Netflix, go, I must Google Iran. I've got to look at some stuff about what they're doing over there. What are they up to in Iran? Their funny little ways with their dictatorship. What's going on? Maybe it was reference to something very specific. But nonetheless, that's the top 10 of the UK's most Googled trending searches of 2025. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. This is Talk. It's the home of common sense. Lots to get through here. And of course, Peter Cardwell is waiting in the wings. I think that's the theatrical phrase. He's in the makeup department as we speak, being plastered with all manner of bronze-like imaginative tones to make him fit for purpose. I know we're a radio station, but we also broadcast as an added extra. If you want to watch us on YouTube, we're there as well. It's a mistake often made. We are judged on radio, not on YouTube. But we are there as an added extra if you want to watch. I think it's rather nice, actually. In the evening, there's nothing better than when you're frying a pork chop, listening and looking at Kevin O'Sullivan's Fizzog. It's a wonderful way to spend 7 till 10 on a daily basis. Lots to talk about here. We've been discussing Abdel Fattah, the Egyptian, who's been welcomed back by Keir Starmer. Come back, my child. It's been my government's top priority to get you back into the UK, despite the fact you're a mad racist anti-Semite who wants people killed. Despite that, I wanted you here. Let's get some voice notes on that very issue. This comes from Sean in Grimsby.
only in the UK can you get sentenced to jail for calling for the death of minorities. Yet if you're a minority, you can openly call for the death of Brits and Jews and get welcomed in the country. There's something seriously wrong with the people who are running things in this country, mate. There really is. And I just don't know. It just seems a bit nuts, mate. Great show, mate.
It does seem a bit nuts. Sean, great comments. Thank you for that, mate. Let's get one on the same issue from Anne in Surrey.
Should the Islamic, I don't know what you call him, Gobby, be deported? No, absolutely not. He should be arrested. He should be put on trial very publicly, and it should be shown. Give him, I don't know, put him in chains for 30 years, but show the rest of these morons that regularly disrupt our capital city what happens to you when you do so, when you threaten Jews, when you threaten the Christians. But of course that won't happen. Keir Starmer will probably give him an MBE or something similar. That won't happen until we put Nigel Farage in.
I like the idea of calling him Gobby. I wondered, did you imagine that at the Crown Court trial? Gobby, will you please stand? We'll watch with interest. Sharon is in Yorkshire on the Tory downfall.
Why is he all of a sudden now? Oh, it's so simple. We come out of the ECHR, we're sending back every foreign criminal, blah, 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 blah. 14 years they were in. They knew all about this then, and we just go round and round in circles. They just keep speaking the same speak and don't do the same deed. It's just crackers. But it just frustrates people. We all scream at the radio when they come on and start saying, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. 14 years, that's all I can say. 14 years.
Yeah, and they're never going to live that down because that is just a in-your-face reality, isn't it? Thank you, Sharon, for that. 14 years. The best they can give is that many of them wouldn't have been heavily involved in the previous administrations. So they could sort of argue that. Some of them, and Kemi Badenoch was business secretary. I mean, she had portfolios in the cabinet, so she was there. But those big offices of state, Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, Chancellor of the Exchequer and Prime Minister, they could all say, no, it wasn't our doing. We didn't want this at the time, but now we're a new party. But I don't know how well that will play. There's been some comment on that. I mean, Reg says, you're quite right, Kemi Badenoch's star is rising, but unfortunately it's like a bit like closing the barn door after the horses have bolted. Good point, Reg. And Steve says, for those people who believe that social media is the Wild West, so no holes barred, should remember that the Wild West had sheriffs, marshals, Texas Rangers, and in most cases the penalty for stepping out of line would be pretty severe. Even the Wild West had laws to be adhered to. It did. But I genuinely believe, and I can never state this emphatically enough, that there is a sizable chunk of our population who don't know that about social. They don't know about libel. They don't know about the fact, even when they might put something that's vaguely innocuous but scattered with sweary words. And then, you think, OK, that's fine. Someone's just gone on a rant about somebody and they've done it in a very kind of litany of profanity. And then you look on their profile and it'll say, I don't know, Chaplain, St Mary's High School. You think, really? Really? You might not keep your job, mate, if you're that. Some people don't know Peter Cardwell. Isn't that true? Genuinely.
Yeah.
When you look at the things people are happy to put their name to.
So I shouldn't go on Twitter and mention the bizarre financial irregularities that are to do with your bank account now.
Indeed.
The money was just resting in your account.
It was just resting there, yes. But it is interesting when it comes to what you should and shouldn't be allowed to say on social media.
Yes.
Most of the time, and we're all guilty of this, we form our opinion based on what whether we believe the sentiment of the person that's written it.
Yes.
We say we don't. We talk about it being free speech, or we talk about it being, Lucy Connolly lots of people saying, yeah, what she said was fine, what this guy said wasn't fine. Some people arguing it's kind of the same.
Did you see
point.
Lucy Connolly's tweet recently in the last 48 hours or so?
What about her fan mail?
Yeah, about this guy libelling her. I mean, or allegedly libelling her. I mean, and being arrested under sending a malicious communication, or at least being accused of it. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, there's all of that. Anyway, what's going on at 10 o'clock this morning?
Well, lots. I mean, this dude who is the Egyptian who's come to this country and been granted citizenship of this country and coming to this country, there are loads of MPs who have got massive amounts of egg all over their face. When we've got anti-Semitic tweets, we've got tweets against the police, the Egyptian police, but white people. I mean, it's an absolute disaster. It's an absolute.
What the Dutch have ever done? There's no such thing as a bad Dutchman. Did you know that?
There's an absolute.
It's a fact.
Well, I think there are probably a few, but there are just so many allegations, there's so many things in the public domain that many politicians could have seen and did not see, and instead campaigned for this guy to be released. Look, he was treated abominably by Egypt. That doesn't give you a right to be an anti-Semite. That doesn't give you a right to be against our British